Pokemon. The starter Pokemon is Agumon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Media Exposure. Xiaosong didn't know where Qingliu's confidence came from, but she had fought with Sharona personally as a trainer. As for the record, it can only be said to be very tragic, and this was when the opponent had already held back. If he hadn't held back, Xiaosong didn't dare to imagine what the scene would be like. In Sharona, Xiaosong could feel the gap between the strengths, which was visible but could not be crossed. Qingliu and Agumon were very strong, and could even defeat her 1v3. Perhaps given some time, they could become Sharona's qualified opponents, or even strong rivals, but definitely not at this time. However, since Qingliu looked so confident, Xiaosong didn't say much. It was good to suffer a little, just so that he could also try her experience. Okay, don't think about whether I will be beaten up here. I need to buy some things next. Led the way. Qingliu reached out and patted Xiaosong's head gently, and walked towards Sui town. You asked me to help lead the way, and you still have this attitude. Why didn't you say you hoped I would be beaten up by Sharona? How do you know? Qingliu glanced at her helplessly and said, I don't know if you can put away the perverted plus gloating expression on your face. Xiaosong. Before night fell, Qingliu took the huge sum of money he had just received and purchased all the things he might need in the next step in Sui town. Energy cubes, which replenish physical strength and restore status, are helpful for the development of Pokemon's potential, and healing sprays for healing injuries are necessary, but the price, isn't it a bit expensive? Intermediate Dragon Energy Cube, 1 day's supply, 100 Alliance coins. Intermediate Healing Spray, 150 ml, 150 Alliance coins. Compared to the primary one I bought before, the price of the intermediate one is more than twice as expensive. I hope you get what you pay for. After taking 2 weeks' worth of energy cubes and healing sprays, Qingliu walked to the counter next to him. In addition to energy cubes and healing sprays, there are also some things that are rarely used in normal times, but come in handy at certain critical moments. Qingliu looked at the bottles of spray-type medicines in front of him, which looked similar to the healing sprays but had a variety of colors. Orange antidote, 100 ml, 100 Alliance coins. Yellow antidote, 100 ml, 150 Alliance coins. Green burn medicine, 100 ml, 150 Alliance coins. Panacea, 50 ml, 500 Alliance coins. Looking at these status healing potions in front of him, Qingliu suddenly felt memories welling up in his heart. When he was a child playing games, he often forgot to buy these things after using them, and as a result, he was tortured by various abnormal conditions during the journey. When he met Ghastly, who could hypnotize in the Lost Tower before, Qingliu did not hesitate to let Agumon sacrifice his physical strength to use small explosions, because Qingliu knew that once hypnotized, the situation would become very troublesome. If you decide to go on a long trip now, you have to prepare all these things no matter how expensive they are, just in case. After sorting out the things in your backpack, Qingliu bought some daily necessities for himself, and followed Xiaosong to a very familiar huge building. Stay here tonight? Qingliu asked in confusion. Yes, you don't know that the Pokemon Center also has a lodging function, right? I didn't know before, but now I know. Perhaps because he didn't pay much attention to such details when watching anime before, Qingliu searched his memory, and didn't know if he didn't pay attention or something else. He really didn't remember many scenes of staying at the Pokemon Center. Xiaosong immediately looked at Qingliu with an expression as if to say, where on earth are you from? Qingliu, led by Xiaosong, checked in at the counter of the Pokemon Center and paid the fee, and then went to the restroom. I'm next door, knock on the door if you have anything. Xiaosong pointed to the room next door and said, okay. Qingliu nodded and opened the door of his room. The overhead lighting was soft, and the layout of the room was very beautiful. There were all kinds of things, big and small, and even the computer on the desk was configured separately. The money for the premium single room was not wasted. Qingliu was quite satisfied. After briefly explaining Agumon from the Poké Ball, he went straight into the bedroom and started taking a shower. This was the first time he had a hot bath since crossing. Before, he wanted to take a bath but there was no condition, so he could only make do with the river and the stream. When Qingliu came out, Agumon was drinking milk with a straw in his mouth. Burp. Seeing Qingliu coming out, Agumon couldn't help but burp and said, "Qingliu, this thing is delicious, and it feels warm in my stomach. That's moo moo milk, produced by a cow Pokemon called Milky Can. It has high nutritional value. Don't waste it." In order to ensure the energy needed for Agumon's physical development and to help quickly get rid of fatigue and restore to the best condition before tomorrow, Qingliu spent a lot of money to buy bottles of easy-to-carry moo moo milk. The price of the bottle in Agumon's hand alone is almost 200 alliance coins. You know, even the intermediate Dragon Energy Cube that Qingliu complained about only costs 100 alliance coins a day, but now Agumon has to finish 2 days' worth of intermediate energy cubes in a few minutes. Don't worry. Agumon pulled out the straw at once, and ton a few big gulps directly down the whole bottle of moo moo milk, and then seemed unsatisfied, opened another bottle and continued to drink. Really a money-eating beast. Seeing Agumon drinking moo moo milk like this, Qingliu felt a little painful. This is not milk, but money. No wonder I have always heard that raising Pokemon is a money-burning behavior. I didn't feel it before when I didn't have money, but now that I have money, I can truly understand the meaning of this sentence. Today, I bought energy cubes plus healing spray plus spray potion, plus moo moo milk and some other expenses, and I have spent nearly 10,000. Maybe, these 150,000 alliance coins are not as rich as I imagined. Especially now that he only has one Agumon. If he has more Pokemon in the future, the expenses will definitely increase exponentially. He still can't stop making money. Knock, knock. Just as Qingliu was thinking about how to make money in the future, there was a hurried knock on the door. "Qingliu, open the door quickly, it's urgent." Xia Song's anxious voice came from outside the door. As soon as Qingliu opened the door, she came in directly. "Why are you so flustered? Come and see this yourself." Xia Song went straight to the computer on the table, opened it, and quickly clicked on several web pages. Qingliu squatted down, his eyes fell on the screen, and several news headlines came into his eyes. Big news. After 10 years of being closed, the Lost Tower in Sui Town welcomes the mysterious couple challenger to pass the level. Skipping the news headlines, Qingliu's eyes gradually moved down and looked at the article below. There was nothing wrong with the first half of the story about Sirona. It was just about her beauty and strength, which was an objective fact. But after the introduction of Qingliu in the middle, it was not right. Because there was no background information about Qingliu that could be found, and because she slipped away during the interview, there was no useful information, so the media simply chose to make up stories. Because of her good looks and the fact that she knew both Sirona and Xia Song, she was speculated to be a child from a big family in the Sinnoh region who came out to gain experience. In addition, because of the mysterious relationship of Pokemon, it confirmed the authenticity of the previous speculation. After all, mystery is likely to represent rarity, and rarity is likely to come from a big family. This rhythm of the media directly caught the thinking of the melon-eating crowd and brought the heat up. Especially when seeing that the self-media organization ranked among the top in the Sinnoh region that published this gossip, and within just a few hours, the number of views has reached millions. Qingliu couldn't help but frown. Millions of views in a few hours, and at this time when computer networks are not very developed, it means that the spread has been very wide, which is not good news. No matter it was Agumon or the huge amount of money he had now, he didn't want to appear in the spotlight so directly. It would not do him any good now. "Qingliu, I know you just met Sirona about the couple, but is this big family's avenue all real? The more I think about it, the more I feel it is." Xia Song stared at Qingliu and asked. After all, how could a guy with such a flexible mind and abnormal strength just run out of the wilderness? It can't be an alien from another planet. Qingliu heard this and his head popped on Xia Song's head. "Why do you believe that kind of rhythmic rhetoric? Instead of speculating about me here, you might as well improve yourself. In addition, do you have anything else to say when you look like this?" Xia Song immediately stepped back in pain, glared at Qingliu angrily, and quietly opened the curtains and pointed to the distance. Chapter 52. The battle begins. Look there. Following the location where Xia Song pointed, there were 3 people holding cameras who looked a little sneaky and looked around from time to time next to the seat under the light. Qingliu narrowed his eyes and found that one of them was very similar in height and build to the reporter who asked him about emotional problems this afternoon. As for the other 2, one seemed to have met him when buying energy cubes, and the last one was a stranger. Are they all paparazzi or reporters? Yes, I found them staring at me when I was walking at the door just now. Hearing Xiaosong say this, Qingliu was basically sure that these guys were most likely coming for him. After all, it only took a simple investigation to know that he appeared in Suai Town with Xiaosong. Since Xiaosong was in the Pokemon Center, he should be here as well. So, they were watching outside. Maybe they just wanted to interview him to earn an exclusive, but maybe they had other purposes. They haven't been determined which room we are in yet, and they dare not go too far in the key areas under the jurisdiction of the Alliance. It will be a bit troublesome if they want to go out tomorrow. Qingliu said. If these paparazzi can't get any useful information from Sirona, they will definitely target themselves. There will definitely be more guys squatting outside tomorrow. At this moment, he couldn't help but want to give a cordial greeting to the media that published the news. Who are the guys who did this? Not only did they slander you, but they even said that there was a child marriage between you and me. Xiaosong blushed and said bitterly. It is likely related to that fat mayor. Even if it was not his instruction, it was sent out with his acquiescence. The traces of showmanship were a bit obvious when I exchanged the bonus for you before. Xiaosong also remembered Qingliu's previous business mutual praise, and wondered, but there is no benefit for him to do this, everyone's attention is on you. No benefit? There are too many benefits. When one of the two related beings appears in the sun, then soon, the other half will actively or passively appear in the sun. But Qingliu didn't want to explain this to Xiaosong. It was too tiring and useless. It was really useless. I'll need you to cover for me tomorrow so that I can sneak out of Suai Town. I thought you were leaving overnight. If there wasn't a fight tomorrow, I might do this, but now both Agumon and I need enough rest time to ensure our physical and mental strength. Qingliu looked at Agumon, who had finished another bottle of moo milk, and said slowly. It seems that you really think you have a chance to beat Sirona. Xiaosong paused and continued, I can help you, but I'm going to watch the fight tomorrow. I want to see if you will cry after being beaten up. Hearing this, Qingliu couldn't help laughing. I don't know if I will cry, but since you said so, you must have cried. Xiaosong's face, which was originally a little ruddy, seemed to be dripping with blood in an instant after being exposed. He mumbled for a long time without saying a complete sentence, and finally ran back to his room. Qingliu shook his head, closed and locked the door, and lay on the bed. Seeing this, Agumon, who had eaten and drunk enough, also followed Qingliu's example and lay flat on his back, looking at the ceiling above his head. In this quiet environment, Qingliu slowly shifted his gaze to Agumon, and after looking at him for a while, he said, Agumon, what do you think about evolution? Evolution. Agumon scratched his eyes with his fingers, and said with a somewhat embarrassed expression, I haven't thought about this topic carefully, but I think even if I think about it carefully, I won't be able to come up with a result. In response to Agumon's reaction, Qingliu smiled and turned his attention back to the ceiling. Evolution will change itself. The body may become larger, stronger, and faster, but there will also be some other possibilities, such as a drastic change in temperament, and even examples of harming oneself and the trainer. In this case, are you still willing to evolve? When Agumon heard Aowagi's words, his eyes gradually dispersed, then slowly focused, and finally said, I think I am willing. Why? I have a vague feeling that Aowagi, you are a very extraordinary person, and you will definitely be at a level that ordinary people will never reach in their lifetime. And if I want to help you and protect you, I have to keep getting stronger. In this case, evolution is a certainty. Agumon scratched his head embarrassedly, although I haven't seen many humans, and I believe that even if I become an unknown person in the future, no matter how strange my personality becomes, I will never hurt Aowagi, because you are my most important friend, unless I die. At this point, Agumon's tone suddenly became serious, as if he was not answering Aowagi's question, but making some kind of promise. Is that so? Qingliu understood what Agumon meant, and after touching its head with his hand, his eyes fell on the note "Evolution is irreversible" on the sacred plan column of the pop-up panel, and he was silent for a long time. Okay, let's go to bed. No words all night. Early the next morning, Xiaosong put on a men's suit and covered himself tightly, and asked Eula to do the same disguise. Then one person and one Pokemon ran towards the two sides of the Pokemon Center from different directions. All the reporters and paparazzi saw the strangely dressed figure and immediately chased after him. Qingliu, after greeting Miss Joy in advance, avoided other paparazzi who stayed behind from the back kitchen of the Pokemon Center, walked out of random town, and then walked towards the south. When Qingliu and Xiaosong arrived together, they found that Sharona had been waiting for a long time. Sharona, who was wearing a cool summer outfit, with her long hair tied up in a ponytail and a wisp of bangs on her forehead, first took the initiative to greet Xiaosong, then her eyes fell on Qingliu and a smile appeared on her face. It seems that you have spent a lot of effort to get rid of those people. Qingliu slowly walked to a place not far from Sharona, and slowly said, sorry to keep you waiting for a long time, those guys are too difficult to deal with. In addition, Xiaosong said that he wanted to watch, do you mind? Sharona shook her head, indicating that these were all minor issues. Then the refereeing matters will be left to Miss Xiaosong. No problem. Xiaosong, the rules of the game are one-on-one, there are no venue restrictions, and there are no rules restrictions. The other party will not be considered the winner until one party loses the ability to fight. Is there a problem? No. No. Then now, the battle begins. The discussion of Agumon's evolution is a foreshadowing of Daozi, and there will be another update later. Chapter 53 Small Explosion vs. Psychic Power. Glenger, come on stage. Sharona took out the Poké Ball first. With a flash of red light, a wedge stone floated in the air, and then the purple body of the Glenger came out from the crack of the stone. Gigi. Hehe. As soon as it came out, the Glenger flew back and forth in the air excitedly, and laughed from time to time. It can be seen that the mental state of the Glenger is much better than yesterday. Although it does not have the violent and tyrannical aura before, its overall temperament has become more restrained. Perhaps compared to before, this is what it should be like now. It is worthy of being a Pokemon that Sharona has taken a fancy to. Qingliu opened the Poké Ball, and Agumon appeared beside him, ready to fight. In this case, let's attack first. Sharona's crisp and pleasant voice rang out, Glenger, use Night Shadow. The gas-like body of the Glenger suddenly expanded and compressed, and a huge shadow appeared, rushing towards Agumon. Move aside and fight back. Qingliu responded immediately. Agumon quickly spread his legs, distanced himself from the attacking dark shadow, and raised his claws to slap it. But unexpectedly, the claws hit the flower monster, but went straight through its body without causing any damage. Qingliu narrowed his eyes when he saw this. Sure enough, because it is gas and not solid, it is not afraid of ordinary contact attacks. At this time, Dark Shadow's attack had already arrived in front of Agumon. Solve the problem in front of you first, and shoot a small flame directly at it. The attack may not work on the flower monster itself, but the collision of moves cannot be avoided in battle. The collision of moves depends on who is bigger and more durable. The fireball spurted out of Agumon's mouth and met the dark shadow. The burning flames pierced through it without any pause. Good reaction, but the attack is not over yet. After Sharona finished praising with a smile, her voice suddenly changed. Flower rock monster, shadow sneak attack. I saw that at some point, a faint shadow emerged from the dissipating dark night shadow that was pierced by a small flame and went straight to Agumon. I really didn't expect to hide the shadow sneak attack inside the dark night shadow. Qingliu instantly understood the situation and said quickly, Agumon, sharp claws to meet the attack. Orange energy instantly ignited on Agumon's arm, wrapped around his claws, and slapped the attacking shadow heavily. But the controlled shadow was very smart. At the moment of the collision, it made a detour to avoid the slap and went directly behind Agumon to attack again. Behind. Hearing Qingliu's reminder, Agumon swung his body and used the power of his body rotation to force Shadow's sneak attack to move forward. When she saw that the moves she was preparing to use to show her power were all resolved and did not play the expected effect, Sharona's inner evaluation of Agumon's strength and Qingliu's command level was raised to a higher level. Agumon's physical fitness and combat level were very close to what Sharona had observed before, and even slightly exceeded it in some places. Qingliu's on-the-spot command was fast, accurate, ruthless, and straightforward. This combination was good news for her who had not found an opponent for too long. Let me enjoy the joy of fighting. Sharona did not hesitate and started a new round of offensive. A ray of light that seemed to be flashing with strange colors shot directly at a tricky angle out of sight at the moment when Agumon's sharp claws stopped attacking. Agumon sensed the chill behind him, and leaped up from the ground with a strong thigh force, barely dodging the attack. After landing, he rushed towards the flower rock monster and started close combat. Seeing Agumon's sharp claws dancing wildly, suppressing the Flower Rock monster, the Flower Rock monster could only attack when it had no way to avoid it, temporarily forcing Agumon back, and then fighting again. Even though it seemed to have the upper hand, Qingliu still felt the pressure hidden in the dark. This time was different from every previous battle. From the beginning, Sharona was always able to seize every gap in Agumon's moves in the battle, and attack when the old strength had gone and the new strength had not yet been born. Even now, this situation has not changed at all. No wonder Xiaosong was not optimistic about himself at all. Sharona's ability to find and seize opportunities in battle was too strong. If you want to get out of this situation, you must think of a way to completely disrupt Sharona's rhythm. You can only choose to attack violently. Use sharp claws, close up and attack in close combat. Seeing that Agumon and Huaiyan were getting closer, Qingliu directly asked him to start a close combat. Use tooth for tooth to hold on. Hehe. Huaiyan let out a strange laugh, and the purple energy around it quickly gathered in its body, and then chose to fight head-on. 1 claw. 2 claws. 3 claws. 5 claws. 7 claws. 9 claws. Agumon urged his sharp claws and slapped Huaiyan's keystone one after another, but it didn't seem to cause much damage. Instead, Huaiyan showed a strange smile on his face. The next second, a strong purple light suddenly bloomed in the distance. Even Qingliu, who was outside the field, could strongly feel the oppression of this breath. He must not be allowed to release it normally. Agumon, fire small flames continuously. Facing Sharona, Qingliu did not have any intention of luck, and directly used the best skill they could master at this stage, the Saiyan Prince's tactics. 12 small flames were launched directly, falling from the sky like small meteors, hitting the Flower Rock monster. It was not over yet. Agumon, who had just finished launching, took a long deep breath, and 12 fireballs followed the previous 12, a total of 24 fireballs, directly covering the space around the Flower Rock monster. Finally, Agumon opened his mouth wide, and rich fire energy surged. A huge fireball far larger than the others was born, and it blasted towards the Flower Rock monster at a speed faster than the small flames. Small explosion. When Sharona saw the fireballs all over the sky, she couldn't help but sigh that Agumon was unusual. He could actually use such a continuous attack. His physical strength must have far exceeded the physical strength limit of ordinary Pokémon. The key point was that it seemed that Agumon didn't consume much energy and still had some energy left. This was what really surprised her. Moreover, this number of moves is indeed a big problem for the Flower Rock monster. Even if the Flower Rock monster's body is illusory, it will definitely be seriously injured if it is hit by 2 more shots, not to mention that there is an attack that looks very powerful and is crushing from the front. If it were the previous Flower Rock monster, how would Sharona deal with it now would still be a question mark, but now it is different. After the Lost Tower extracted 2/3 of the negative energy, the Flower Rock monster learned a move. A move with amazing power. Flower Rock monster, use all your strength. Mental power. Buzz. A buzzing sounded in the air, and powerful superpower energy descended instantly. At this moment, it seemed that the air became much heavier. A purple light shot out instantly, like half of a sharp sword, and instantly cut all the fireballs that touched it in half. In the end, it directly hit the small explosion head-on. The third update, go to bed. Chapter 54 Evolution. Boom. With a roar, the moment the two energies collided, a wave of air instantly swept across the surroundings, blowing the nearby trees and vegetation into pieces, and even Qingliu and Sharona were blown back a few steps. Facing the strong wind, Qingliu barely opened his eyes and looked at the center of the battlefield. The Flower Rock monster's spiritual power exuded a wave of oppressive breath, forcibly withstanding the small explosion that was supposed to be advancing all the way, forcing it to stop in midair. Since mastering this move, Qingliu has encountered a move that can confront it head-on. Spiritual power. I didn't learn this powerful move yesterday, but I suddenly realized it overnight. It's really a good talent. Seeing the momentum of the spiritual power getting stronger and stronger, Qingliu knew that he couldn't count on the small explosion this time. Silently observing the conflict between the energy of the strong mental power and the energy of the small explosion, until he found that it had begun to emit a dangerous and uncontrollable aura, as if it was about to explode. Qingliu quickly said, Agumon, lower your center of gravity and rush forward. As soon as the voice fell, a violent explosion sounded above his head, and the terrifying energy ball set off an even more violent hurricane. Hold on, rush forward with all your strength. In the storm, Qingliu's voice was inaudible, but Agumon still heard it. His body tilted down and sank, sticking to the ground in the most labor-saving way, while raising his claws and rushing towards the flower monster. It happened that the chaotic hurricane suddenly changed direction and blew from behind Agumon, as if an invisible big hand was dragging Agumon's back, causing its speed to surge instantly. In an instant, it had arrived at the feet of the flower monster. The flower monster suddenly lowered its head, revealing a resentful look mixed with ghost energy. At the same time, a strange wave followed the flower monster's line of sight, linking it and Agumon together, as if they had reached some kind of strange contract. Qingliu saw that this was a grudge move, but now was not the time to worry about it. Use sharp claws. Agumon stomped his foot on the ground, ready to jump up and attack. Qingliu's sight also followed the ground to the flower rock monster in the air without any evasive action, and the explosion center next to it that was still emitting smoke and dust. Did the small explosion disappear after the mental power was offset? Why didn't the flower rock monster cut off the energy supply? Unless there was something there. Qingliu had an idea in his mind, and his mouth followed the action instinctively. Agumon, jump back. Agumon, who had already accumulated power and was ready to jump forward to attack, heard Qingliu's voice and the faint tingling sensation on his head. Agumon's body leaning forward instantly leaned back, and at the same time, his legs exerted force and instantly jumped into the air behind him. Almost at the moment when Agumon just jumped up, a psychic energy fell from the air that was still emitting smoke and dust like lightning. Bang! A large hole was blasted out in front of the position where Agumon was standing just now, which was where it should have jumped forward. If Qingliu had reminded him a little slower, or if Agumon's intuition and reaction were a little slower, this attack would have landed on Agumon. What a pity. Seeing that Agumon had temporarily changed its trajectory to avoid the attack, Sharona said with some regret, and her expression became more focused. The attack method of hiding moves within moves can be said to be a very concealed and efficient fighting method, but it has failed twice in a row in front of Qingliu. But the more this happened, the more excited she was. Gankei, use trickery. Agumon, rush forward while using small flames. After watching the Gankei, who was activating his mind and strengthening special attacks, fighting with Agumon, Qingliu's expression became more solemn. The one just now was also a mental power, but the power is much weaker. It should be difficult to use this move continuously in such a short time interval, so, is it the residual energy after the explosion? It was also the strongest move with full force, and all the small explosions disappeared, but the mental power was still left. This is enough to explain the situation. Not to mention that he was hit by the resentment move before. As Agumon's level and physical fitness improved, the use of small explosions also increased, and even reached 3 times, but it still did not exceed the limit of resentment. Without the most powerful means of attack, the opponent's attack will only become more and more fierce and more difficult to resist with a blessing of trickery moves. The situation seems to have begun to move towards failure invisibly. As a referee, Xia Song, who has been observing the battle from a distance, also discovered the decline of Qingliu and Agumon at this moment. Agumon is indeed powerful, but at this stage, he has too few moves. And now that Sharona has seen through it, she sees the opportunity to seal the most threatening one. It can be said that losing is only a matter of time. Xia Song couldn't help but frown as he looked at Qingliu, who was still calm and whose facial expression and demeanor didn't change much. Could it be that at this point, there was still a chance for a Jedi counterattack? Xia Song silently rejected this possibility in his heart. This possibility was too small, and it could even be said to be impossible. Because the opponent was Sharona, the strongest young generation in the Sinnoh region, and it was impossible for her to give any flaws that would reverse the situation. Sharona naturally knew what Xia Song could find. After using the resentment move to hit, the balance of victory had completely tilted towards her. What she needed to do next was to find an opportunity to end the battle with a single blow. Although the battle with Qingliu made her experience the long-lost pleasure, it was time to end it now. After seeing that the Flower Rock used a tooth-for-tooth counterattack to force Agumon back, Sharona seized the opportunity to issue an order. Flower Rock, use psychic power. Jiji the Flower Rock laughed strangely, and the terrifying psychic energy gathered together, condensed into a beam of light, and shot straight at Agumon, who was still retreating and had no time to stabilize his body. Agumon widened his eyes and wanted to dodge, but his physical strength was too much, and the speed of psychic power was too fast, so he had no time to react. Seeing this scene, Qingliu knew that there was no other way. Originally, he was still thinking about fighting in the form of Agumon to see if he could win, but now it seems that Sirona and Flower Rock have left their peers far behind, and it is not something Agumon can deal with. In this case, let's change the form. Quickly open the panel and come to the yes/no evolution option in the column of Divine Plan, at the end of the panel information. Qingliu chose yes. The next second, the Sacred Plan pattern printed on Qingliu's right palm lit up. Almost at the same time, a dazzling white light burst out from Agumon's body. I stayed up too late last night, which disrupted my biological clock, and I am very tired now. I will stop here for today. Tomorrow I will finish the story of Tyrannosaurus and Sirona at once, so that you can enjoy it. In addition, I would like to thank Blue Dragonman for his 500 starting coins and Skywide and Black for his 100 starting coins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Tyrannosaurus. Buzz. As the light rose, the strong will of the Flower Rock monster was like a drop in the ocean, disappearing without even a ripple. Looking at this sudden scene in front of her, Xiaosong, who originally thought that Agumon was doomed to fail, couldn't help but widen her eyes. Is this the light of evolution? As the daughter of a gym trainer, she naturally knew what was happening at this moment, but what she didn't expect was that Agumon would evolve at this point in time. You know, every time a Pokemon evolves, its strength will assure an qualitative leap. Agumon couldn't beat Sirona and Flower Rock monster during his time, but if it evolves, it's not impossible. Thinking of this, Xiaosong couldn't help but turn his eyes to Qingliu, whose expression hadn't changed much all the time. So, you said you were sure because you knew that Agumon had reached the conditions for evolution. Sirona was also a little surprised by the scene. I thought it was the last attack, but I didn't expect something to happen at this moment. Based on my previous observations of Agumon's physical fitness, it should be stronger than the Sharp-Teeth Land Shark, which is still a round land shark. So, if it evolves now, can it catch up with the Sharp-Teeth Land Shark? Compared to Xiaosong's thoughts on the possible change in the situation, Sirona is more looking forward to the change in Agumon's strength. It is very satisfying to be able to fight so happily. Now that she can continue this battle, Sirona feels as if she has returned to the day when she just got the Pokemon to go out for a trip. Her whole body is full of blood and passion. Granite, use tricks. Granite responded and began to activate its brain. Sirona's eyes fell on Agumon and she waited quietly. It's just, why does it look so big? In the center of the venue, Agumon's whole body exuded a dazzling evolutionary light, which became more and more dazzling. After reaching its limit, the light completely bloomed. Agumon, originally nearly 1 meter tall, began to grow at a visible speed. In a moment, his body size had surpassed the 1 meter tall rock monster, and then everyone present. The ground was stepped into 2 deep depressions by his surging body size. After that, he still had no intention of stopping, and continued to grow at a terrifying speed. After this surge lasted for a full 10 seconds, the light of evolution slowly showed signs of stopping. But at this time, Agumon's height was already the same as the several meter tall trees in the woods next to him, and his body size was like a small mountain standing in the same place. No, maybe it can't be called Agumon anymore. Where Agumon stood before, a giant dinosaur with a height of 5 meters and an unknown weight, which was far larger than an adult elephant, came into view. Unlike before the evolution, when the whole body was covered with yellow, after the evolution, ferocious blue patterns appeared all over the body. The 3 fingers that were originally standing side by side became more flexible, and the white claws emitted a faint cold light. In addition, a brown beetle-like shell-like head armor grew on the originally exposed head, protecting the top of the head. On both sides, brown pointed horns curved upwards, and between the nose and the 2 curved horns, stood a huge horn. Roar. A roar that shook the earth sounded, and a terrifying airflow comparable to the previous small explosion and mental power shock blew the Flower Rock monster back several meters before it barely stabilized its body. Gigi the Flower Rock monster, whose face was filled with strange laughter from time to time, froze at this moment. Not only it, Xiaosong and Sharona were also shocked at this moment. Because the size change of Agumon before and after this evolution was too big, so big that it felt like two different creatures. The original Agumon, although it had very good potential, physical fitness and claws were not bad, but it could be seen that it was still in the period of accumulating energy and limited combat power, but now, it has completely changed. A monster of gigantic size appeared, its entire body seemed to be full of attacking weapons. Just standing there, the breath of an ancient beast was already blowing in the face. If some of the less courageous ones were even scared to tears by this momentum. The change is so big. Sharona did not expect that just one evolution would cause such a drastic change. She originally thought that Agumon would be a rare and powerful Pokemon like Sharptooth Land Shark, and even if it evolved, it would be more inclined to improve combat power rather than change in size, but it seems that all her guesses were wrong. And Sharona's eyes gradually moved up and locked on Agumon's ferocious red eyes. Just from this momentum, it was certain that the giant beast in front of them was not a paper tiger, but a real monster. Not only them, but even the trainer Qingliu was a little surprised by the changes that took place after Agumon evolved. Race, Tyrannosaurus, classification, dinosaur Pokemon, attributes, dragon, fire, features, sharp claws. Because the head and claws are too hard and sharp, the power of attacks using them will increase by 50%, level 20. Exclusive moves, small flame super flame, fire type, power 80, sharp claws, fire type, power 40, small blast super blast, fire type, power 90, Tyrannosaurus charge, dragon type, power 60, mastered moves, none, race stats, 510, horsepower 88, attack 101, defense 90, special attack 95, special defense 70, speed 66, intimacy 75, status, normal, information summary, very aggressive, with sharp claws, huge horns, and a body like a weapon. Compared with its terrifying appearance, its personality is unexpectedly calm and alert. It has strong strength and high IQ, and can cooperate with its companions in combat. Divine Plan has evolved into Tyrannosaurus, mature, combat form. This size, this aura, and this configuration are really too unfair for ordinary Pokemon. Although the battle is not won by the bigger one, under the same conditions, the bigger one will have an absolute advantage in terms of speed and strength. Aoyagi. A low hum sounded in his ears. It was called a low hum, but it was as if two trumpets suddenly sounded not far away. This familiar voice made Aoyagi's eyes fall on Agumon. No, it should be called Tyrannosaurus now. Feeling the meaning conveyed in Tyrannosaurus' eyes, Aoyagi understood that it meant that it was ready for battle and could give it a try. In this case, let me see the power you have gained after evolution. Tyrannosaurus, use Super Flame. Chapter 56 The Power of Tyrannosaurus. The moment Qingliu's voice fell, the 5-meter-tall Tyrannomon opened its bloody mouth, and the terrifying fire energy surged rapidly, condensing into an extremely huge fireball. An attack of this size. Standing opposite, Sharona, as the most intuitive spectator, could naturally see Tyrannomon's every move clearly. When she saw Tyrannomon about to attack, her breathing could not help but speed up a bit. Because this fireball was really too big. If the previous small flame was a small flame, then the current super flame was a real super flame. Even a glance could show that it was larger than the Flower Rock monster. Sharona didn't dare to think about its power. It was too late to dodge, so she could only try to take it head-on. Sharona quickly said, Flower Rock monster, use your mental power with all your strength. Quickly condensing and gathering super energy, the Flower Rock monster compressed it into shape, and then opened its gas-like mouth fiercely, and the mental power shot out instantly. Super Flame, fire. Tyrannomon roared, and a huge fireball with a diameter of nearly 2 meters was ejected. Chi-chi-chi. Wherever the super flame passed, the water on the leaves of the green grass several meters away on the ground was completely evaporated in an instant, turning into dry branches and rotten leaves that were burned to ashes by the flames. When such a super flame collided with the attacking spiritual thoughts, a completely different scene happened from the previous stalemate where the small flame was devoured by the spiritual thoughts. The pink superpower energy had almost no attack or blocking effect. The spiritual thoughts were almost melted by the high temperature at the moment of contact with the super flame. It disappeared after only resisting for less than 2 seconds. Then the super flame, which was not affected too much, continued to fly towards the Flower Rock monster. Flower Rock monster, get out of the way. Sirona hurriedly commanded. The moves had no effect on the attack. If hit by such a terrifying move, I'm afraid the Flower Rock monster would lose its combat effectiveness in an instant. Fortunately, the Flower Rock monster had already sensed something was wrong, and had begun to dodge in advance while Sirona was giving orders, dodging the attack in the gap before the super flame rushed over. And then, boom! A huge roar sounded not far behind. Sirona breathed a sigh of relief, then turned her head to look at the place where the super flame had landed. A huge pit appeared on the river surface several meters wide at this moment. The river was directly blocked by the burning fireball. A stream of steaming white mist slowly rose with a harsh hissing sound, covering the river surface. Seeing this scene, Sirona's eyes could not help but turn back to the behemoth not far away. It can actually blast the river to stop flowing. Can such a terrifying leap be achieved with just one evolution? Sirona couldn't help but compare Tyrannosaurus with a sharp-toothed land shark that evolved from the round land shark at the same time, trying to find this almost qualitative change. But she found that it was completely impossible. Even if she carefully selected and cultivated a sharp-toothed land shark, which was trained with various resources, it would not be possible for its strength to increase so much after the first evolution. What's more, Pokémon like Garchomp are famous in the Pokémon world as late bloomers. The more they develop, the more potential they will have. If it can't do it, then is it true that the entire Pokémon world cannot do it? If it can't do it with one evolution now, will it be possible to evolve from Garchomp to Garchomp in the future? Sirona didn't know. The only thing she knew was that she was now in a desperate situation. If she wasn't careful, she would lose this battle. Yes, she would lose. Sirona's expression became dazed. She had forgotten when she lost last time. Perhaps she had never lost. Along the way, she had defeated too many players. Her eyes weren't already on those predecessors, or even more distant goals. But now, she was going to lose to a guy who was 1 or 2 years younger than her. It's really interesting. Sirona's face was full of fighting spirit and her eyes became more determined. It is precisely because of the infinite possibilities that Pokémon battles can make people's blood boil. Flower Rock monster, don't give up, fire at full power. Dark Shadow. As if driven by the sudden burst of momentum from Sirona, the ghost energy around Flower Rock monster's body was quickly mobilized, turning into a terrifying giant shadow, flying straight towards Tyrannosaurus. But momentum does not equal strength. The huge size of this huge dark shadow is only compared to Flower Rock monster. When Dark Shadow rushed in front of Tyrannosaurus, the huge difference in size made it seem like a ball of black gas, which was directly dispersed in the air by Tyrannosaurus with a wave of its claws. However, Sirona's attack did not stop. In the dissipated ghost energy, several shadows that seemed very difficult to find scattered and turned into a huge net, covering Tyrannosaurus' head. Is there a variant method to use the shadow sneak attack? Qingliu saw this change and said, Tyrannosaurus, melt them with super flames. The scorching breath appeared again, and even from a very far distance, a little bit of heart pain could be felt. Sirona did not react to this, her golden eyes sparkling in the firelight. Now, Rocky, use resentment. Rocky came out of the edge of the large net formed by Shadow Attack, which was about to fly to the mouth of Tyrannosaurus. The resentful eyes stared at Tyrannosaurus, and a strange connection followed his gaze, connecting the two together. As if affected, the flame in Tyrannosaurus' mouth began to shrink. Very good. Sirona knew that Qingliu's Pokémon's physical strength and endurance were its strengths. She did not ask for resentment to be completely sealed, but even if it had a short-term effect, there was a possibility of continuing the fight. Rocky, keep rushing forward and use tricks continuously. After Shadow Attack hits, use Psychic Power Attack with all your strength. Ho ha ho ha. Rocky also felt the possibility of success. With a strange laugh, he used tricks to boost Special Attack. After using it twice in a row, he was already very close to Tyrannosaurus, and a pink psychic energy was brewing. A direct hit at such a close distance should be able to cause considerable damage even if its defense has evolved and grown in size. Sirona quickly sorted out her thoughts and said, Spiritual Power, Fire. Buzz. As soon as the words fell, the Flower Rock monster's mouth suddenly opened wide, and all the psychic energy poured out, shooting directly at the nearby Tyrannosaurus. Facing this powerful attack, Qingliu glanced at the meaning conveyed in Tyrannosaurus's scarlet eyes and did not issue any orders. Then, Tyrannosaurus began to act on its own. There was no dodging, no defense, and no attack. It just lowered its head, aimed its head covered with the brown carapace and with 3 sharp horns at the attacking spiritual power, and then, directly hit it. Chapter 57 Sweeping the Mutated Tyrannosaurus Rex Charges. The part of Tyrannosaurus that has both powerful attack and defense capabilities is not the claws of Tyrannosaurus, which is the youth version of the nemesis of Tyrannosaurus, but its head. Tyrannosaurus' most common close combat method is to rush forward head-on and horn-to-horn like a bullfight. As the saying goes, one head is the best defense against 10,000 men, which is the truest portrayal of Tyrannosaurus. At this moment, Tyrannosaurus asked Qingliu to temporarily relax his command over him, and chose to use his head to fight the incoming mental power head-on. Boom! An energy explosion sounded. The mental power, which was already extremely fast, hit Tyrannosaurus' head directly under the active approach of Tyrannosaurus, bringing a cloud of dust to cover the surroundings. When Sharona saw this scene, even though she had witnessed all kinds of bizarre battles with her own eyes, she couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. Unless the level is completely crushed, or if you have an extraordinary talent in defense and have absolute confidence in yourself, it is impossible to use this fighting method. Although it was only a short time to get along, one can also see part of a person's character in a few words. The boy in front of her, named Qingliu, who has already pushed her to the brink of despair, would not allow his Pokemon to do some unnecessary and dangerous operations. But now it happened, which means Sharona suddenly felt a bad feeling in her heart, especially when the smoke and dust slowly dissipated and a huge figure like a hill in the center of the explosion still stood upright. The sense of crisis instantly reached the limit. Flower Rock Monster, be careful. Before the voice fell, a whirlwind suddenly rose in the smoke and dust that had not yet dissipated, and a huge tail covered with the blue hideous lines swung out horizontally. The Flower Rock Monster, who thought that the mental power had caused some damage and was a little relaxed, was hit by the wedge stone without reacting at all. Almost in an instant, the Flower Rock Monster was hit by this powerful blow, turned into a stream of light and fell to the ground, deeply trapped. In the gradually thinning smoke and dust, the figure of Tyrannosaurus gradually became clear, and Sharona was able to see the state of Tyrannosaurus clearly. Then, she was surprised to find that there was not even a trace of injury on the top of Tyrannosaurus' head, where the psychic power had just collided head-on. Without using any moves, relying only on physical defense to resist the powerful psychic power used by an opponent of the same level, how terrifying defense does it take to do such a thing? Sharona didn't know, but she knew that the Flower Rock Monster couldn't do it, and even her trump card, the Sharptooth Land Shark, couldn't do it. And this Tyrannosaurus did it easily. Sharona stared at Tyrannosaurus' head and the brown carapace covering its entire head, and finally turned her head to look at the Flower Rock Monster that was pulled into the ground. The purple gas that originally came out of the gap in the keystone and was composed of 108 souls fused together to serve as the face had just been dispersed by Tyrannosaurus. At this moment, only a keystone emitting a faint blue light was left, still shaking. Obviously, the power of Tyrannosaurus' tail whip just now, under the blessing of the terrifying power carried by its huge body, is probably no less powerful than some fighting-type attack moves. After the evolution, just a simple contact almost made the Flower Rock Monster lose its combat ability. If it was hit by the Super Flame just now, perhaps, it would not even have the chance to shake now. The combat power is too strong. This Pokemon of unknown origin, named Agumon, which later evolved into a monster, and Aoyagi of unknown origin, the strength of this unknown origin combination. The strength is really incomprehensible and terrifying. The power of the long-range attack is completely not on the same level, and the close attack cannot break the defense. The outcome of such a battle seems to have been doomed long ago. Sharona couldn't help but let out more breath slowly. Did you lose? Sharona felt a little heavy in her heart. No one wants to lose, especially for those who have been winning all the way. But then, Sharona relaxed again. It's been a long time since I've felt this way, this feeling of failure. As Sharona thought about it, she suddenly laughed. It was indeed the right decision to come to Suai Town this time, as she could actually meet such an interesting and young trainer. Perhaps, this year's Lily of the Valley tournament will be the best in recent years. Then, I'll use the Fang Land Shark to fight your Tyrannosaurus again with all my strength. Thinking of this, Sharona let out a long sigh and immediately raised her hand to announce her defeat. At this moment, A violent and cold breath suddenly broke out, causing her heart to jump, and she turned her head sharply to look at where the flower rock monster was. The flower rock monster, which had almost lost its ability to move, suddenly had waves of dark energy around its body. These negative energies provided strength to the flower rock monster, causing it to change its personality drastically, while giving it the terrifying physical strength to support its body's movement again. Sharona's expression suddenly became serious. Originally, she thought that 2/3 of the negative energy was taken away by the incubus and ghastly yesterday. In addition to the psychic power move she learned and mastered last night, and there was no abnormality in today's battle, she thought that the flower rock monster had digested the remaining negative energy. But now it seems that it is just hiding. However, since you want to admit defeat now, let me solve this problem. Sharona took out the Poké Ball of the sharp-toothed land shark and prepared to open it. Qingliu, who had been silently observing the battle, raised his hand immediately after seeing this scene. Greymon, use Tyrannosaurus charge. When Tyrannosaurus saw Qingliu's action, his huge legs spread apart and stood in a resting state, ready to enter the battle state at any time. So almost at the same time as Qingliu's voice fell, Tyrannosaurus began to charge, and his body, which was larger than an adult elephant, spread his legs. Boom, boom, boom. As Tyrannosaurus ran, the ground began to shake as if a small earthquake had occurred. Amid the sound of breaking wind, dragon energy appeared little by little on the sharp horns of Tyrannosaurus, quickly covering and enveloping the entire body of Tyrannosaurus, and finally brought about a series of flowing ripples, rushing straight towards the flower rock monster. Sharona was interrupted by the shaking and unstable ground, and could not help but turn her eyes and look at the source of the vibration. Then, she saw a dark blue dragon energy ball like a hill rushing through the middle distance at a high speed, then jumped up from the ground, and fell from the sky like a missile suppressing from the sky. And the center of the suppression was exactly where the flower rock monster was, which was releasing negative energy and slowly standing up from the ground. Chapter 58 Strong Suppression. Negative emotions increased the abilities of the flower rock monster, and also increased its perception. It naturally discovered the approach of Tyrannosaurus, and Tyrannosaurus, which had already jumped up and dived down to attack. The moment it reacted, the negative energy of the flower rock monster began to surge, transforming into psychic energy, activating the move mental power. Compared with before, the aura of the mental power contaminated by the violent negative energy became more gloomy, the color became deeper and darker, and the power was also improved under this blessing. Even Sharona, who was standing by, saw this energy and her expression became more solemn. Obviously, the power of this mental power was far greater than any previous one, reaching the point of doubling. Ha! With a roar, the completely different mental power was launched at the diving Tyrannosaurus. Buzz! A faint buzzing sounded in the air, but it suddenly disappeared in an instant. Because, the mental power that was shot out had already hit Tyrannosaurus. Boom! The energy collision caused smoke and dust to rise, and a violent explosion sounded, with waves echoing around. When the flower rock monster saw that the attack was successful, it immediately let out a cold and strange laugh. The previous hit was limited in power, but now with a negative energy blessing, it can definitely injure this guy, and then make up for it, and make sure to make this guy who just beat him up look good. Another psychic energy began to brew, and the flower rock monster aimed at the position where the attack was just made. Seeing this scene, Sharona was also afraid that the situation would gradually get out of control, so she directly opened the Poké Ball and released a fanged land shark, ready to let it join the battle and help Tyrannosaurus solve the flower rock monster problem completely. But before the fanged land shark had time to attack, the huge figure of Tyrannosaurus had already rushed out of the black smoke. Not only was there no sign of any injury, but even the dragon energy wrapped around the body did not show any signs of weakening, as if the mental power that was doubled by the negative energy just now did not produce any effect. Hey! The purple and light red gas-like face of the flower monster showed an expression of disbelief. The words of command from Sharona came to her lips, but she didn't say them in the end. She just looked at the dragon energy wrapped around Tyrannosaurus' body, a little dazed. I've never seen a dragon-type move before. Sharona didn't know what it was, but the only thing she could confirm was that this move she didn't recognize was another powerful killing move of Tyrannosaurus. Because even though the flower monster, whose physical strength was constantly replenished at this moment, fired mental power again and again, trying to stop Tyrannosaurus, it had no effect. All of them were blocked by the Dragon-type moves around its body. Until the distance between the two Pokémon was close. The flower monster could no longer hide the anger and fear in its heart, and tried its best to use all the energy in its body for this final attack. It's useless. Qingliu said expressionlessly. Greymon, end the battle. In the dark mental power, the top of the head of the Greymon with sharp horns erected instantly broke through it completely, and then hit the keystone of the flower rock monster. Bang! Exclamation mark. A huge sound that was so dull that it seemed that the earth was making a low hum exploded in the ears. Then, the ground where the flower rock monster was located could not withstand this huge force, and it instantly collapsed like a spider web, bringing up earth, rocks, sand and dust that swept to the surroundings. When the dust settled, in the nearby collapse area of more than 10 meters, only the Greymon was left standing proudly in the original place. At this time, the purple-red gas-like face of the flower rock monster had completely disappeared, leaving only a dull keystone lying quietly under the huge sole of the foot of the Greymon. The negative energy that caused the flower rock monster to go into a strange state also turned into wisps of residue under the huge physical consumption and the strong physical suppression of Tyrannosaurus, and slowly dissipated in the air. Seeing the negative energy completely disappear, Qingliu slowly retracted his gaze and turned to Tyrannosaurus and the collapse area just hit by Tyrannosaurus. The power and damage range are much stronger than I expected. Tyrannosaurus Charge, a new move that Agumon mastered after evolving into Tyrannosaurus, relies on its huge body to drive the dragon energy and use its horns as spears to launch attacks. Although the power value itself is not high, it has gained an explosive improvement by relying on its current characteristics. Sharp claws. Because the head and claws are too hard and sharp, the power will be increased by 50% when using them to launch attacks. The power has become more powerful than the specialty move Super Flame, and is catching up with Super Blast. This is also the first dragon-exclusive move that Tyrannosaurus has mastered at this stage. It's interesting to say that it's a dragon-type Pokémon, but its exclusive moves are all fire-type. It seems that Adu, who is the king of dragons but has all flying-type moves, are really compatible in some ways. Shaking his head to get rid of this idea, Qingliu couldn't help but start to look forward to it. The power of Tyrannosaurus Charge has reached such a terrifying level, so what kind of performance will the Super Blast that is even more powerful than it, which is evolved from the small explosion, have? I can only wait for a chance to try it, but it's also quite troublesome, and the environment requirements may be a bit high. He was afraid of setting the mountain on fire during the small explosion, and now the super explosion may require more attention. Finally, Qingliu looked at Sharona, who walked to the flower rock monster not far away and took it back into the Poké Ball, and the sharp-toothed land shark who had just been summoned by her and had been following beside her, and narrowed his eyes. He was almost killed by this guy just now. After a hard fight, he even used irreversible evolution to make Agumon evolve into Tyrannomon, but in the end, he was almost intercepted by land shark. You know, this is a battle with the future Sinnoh champion Sharona, and Tyrannomon can definitely get a lot of experience. If it is really snatched away at the last moment, Qingliu will be really speechless. At this time, Sharona also slowly walked over. Thank you for your shot. In addition, this is a very exciting battle. I lost convincingly. Sharona put away the Poké Ball and took the initiative to extend her hand. It's just luck. Qingliu stretched out her hand and shook it. Sharona heard Qingliu's words and smiled and shook her head. It's not a fluke to be able to command such a powerful Pokémon. Sharona raised her head and looked at Tyrannomon, and Land Shark also looked over. Tyrannomon just lowered his head at this time, and looked at Land Shark with scarlet eyes. Invisibly, both sides felt a hint of sharpness in each other's eyes. Chapter 59, Lily of the Valley Conference in Lone Wolf. Kaba. The sharp-toothed land shark made a low cry, revealing a hint of wanting to fight. Tyrannomon didn't cry, but just stared quietly, which was quite oppressive with its huge size. As the two looked at each other for a longer time, the tension became more and more obvious. Sharp-toothed land shark, don't be like this. Sharona glanced at it, and the sharp-toothed land shark immediately turned its head and restrained its breath. Qingliu also waved his hand, and Tyrannomon didn't say anything and sat down directly behind him. Although Qingliu also wanted to kill monsters and gain experience like the Lost Tower before to achieve the effect of rapid leveling, if the target is Sharona's trump card sharp-toothed land shark, he needs to think carefully. At the same level, Qingliu has absolute confidence. But the current level of Sharptooth Land Shark is 30, and it is a quasi-god Pokemon that becomes stronger as the level increases. Although Tyrannoman has an absolute innate advantage, Qingliu doesn't know whether it can make up for the level difference between them, and he is not sure. The only thing that can be confirmed is that Tyrannosaurus will not win. Of course, it is not that easy for Land Shark to win against Tyrannosaurus either. It is likely to be a long-term tug-of-war. Moreover, without any agreement, it is somewhat disrespectful to fight against the second Pokemon after defeating the other party's Flower Rock monster. Let's save the opportunity to fight for next time. Sorry, Tyrannosaurus may have become a little irritable after evolution, Qingliu said with a smile, causing Tyrannosaurus sitting behind him to open his big scarlet eyes. It's okay, Land Shark's personality is really impatient since childhood. Sharona responded with a smile. After exchanging a few polite words, Sharona turned to the main topic, regarding Agumon. No, regarding the proposed identity of Tyrannosaurus, I will give a simple explanation to my family later, and I will start to help you finalize its household registration as long as there is a chance. Thank you very much. Qingliu was naturally happy about this. Even though his strength increased dramatically after evolution, he did not feel that he was invincible just because he defeated Sharona's Flower Rock monster once. The official identity of Tyrannosaurus is very necessary both now and in the future. Moreover, he will most likely have new Digimon or other new Pokemon in the future. If he can operate it without any risk this time, it will be much more convenient in the future. So he expressed his gratitude to Sharona very solemnly. Sharona waved her hand and then asked, "Where do you plan to go next, or what do you plan to do next?" Where to go? Qingliu pondered for a moment, shook his head and said, "It's not yet determined. Tyrannosaurus and I came to Sui Town because we stayed in the wild for too long and wanted to change the environment. As a result, a series of things accumulated and it has come to this point." Sharona didn't care about this and continued to ask, "Since there is no goal for the time being, do you want to consider participating in this year's Lily of the Valley Conference?" Lily of the Valley Conference? After Qingliu's brain reacted for a while, he realized that what Sharona was talking about was the Sinnoh Region Trainer League competition held on Lily of the Valley Island. "So have you decided to participate?" Qingliu asked back. "Well, when I was 10 years old, I planned to go on a journey, but at that time, Dr. Yamanashi had an important experiment, and I couldn't leave as an assistant. Now that I have settled down for so many years, it's time to challenge the pinnacle of trainers." The pinnacle of trainers? For Sharona, it is not difficult to win the championship of the tournament, so she should be referring to the championship and above. In addition to receiving generous bonuses, sufficient fame and honor, the winner of each Lily of the Valley tournament can also obtain the qualification to challenge the 4 Heavenly Kings of the Sinnoh region and the Sinnoh champion. Speaking of the champion, it seems that we don't know who the current champion is. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, after this year, the championship will most likely change hands. So, do you want to try it yourself? Qingliu thought for a moment, until he combined challenging the gym with exploring the historical ancient buildings, and challenging the gym to participate in the competition with gaining experience, and finally nodded. "I think I can give it a try. Then let's meet at the Lily of the Valley Conference." "Okay." Qingliu nodded, then put on his backpack and came to Xiaosong, who was acting as a referee but seemed to be invisible. At this time, Xiaosong looked up blankly at Qingliu's approach, with a look of disbelief on his face. There was not even a countdown and announcement of the results. "You are not a very good referee?" Qingliu asked jokingly. Xiaosong also slowly came back to his senses and said honestly, "Because I was a little surprised, I didn't react for a while. Surprised that I can win. A little, but after seeing Agumon evolve, I am not so surprised. I am more surprised that Agumon can become so big." Xiaosong slowly raised his head and looked at the behemoth standing next to Qingliu. Tyrannosaurus was familiar with Xiaosong and nodded slightly. "It's just a slight change in size. You'll be more surprised later." Xiaosong frowned when he heard this. When he was about to ask a question after thinking for a moment, Qingliu had already taken out the Poké Ball and put Tyrannosaurus back. "Thank you for your help during this period. I hope that when we meet next time, you will be a qualified successor to the gym trainer. Hey? Are you leaving now? I've been here for a long time. It's time to go." Qingliu walked past Xiaosong and patted her on the shoulder. Then he raised his hand and made a goodbye gesture without looking back, and walked towards the jungle not far away. Xiaosong returned to the same expression as before, and stared at Qingliu's gradually disappearing back in a daze. Xiaosong didn't come back to his senses until he completely disappeared from his sight. The first time they met was because he made a mistake and Xuliu ran away from home. He entertained Xuliu and beat them up, but in the end he designed to help them reconcile. Later, when they arrived at Sui town, they talked a lot about the spirit of showing off one sword to the strong, and then they beat him up again. In the end, they passed a lost tower and defeated Sirona in a dreamlike way. After spending some time together on and off, they suddenly waved goodbye, feeling a little sad. Meeting and parting are also compulsory courses for trainers. Remember the feeling of this moment and cherish the next reunion. Sirona appeared beside Xiaosong at some point, also looking at the place where Qingliu disappeared, and comforted him in a gentle tone. Besides, such a mysterious person has such powerful strength and Pokemon. He will definitely become a very famous trainer in the future. If you want to become a friend who can catch up with him, then work hard. Hearing this, Xiaosong couldn't help but think of the world's #1 gym trainer mentioned by Qingliu before. If it can be realized, maybe there will be more moments of reunion, and maybe I can even beat him up to relieve my anger. So, we must show our momentum. Xiaosong said him softly, then said goodbye to Sirona, and went back to the Pokemon Center in Random Town to pick up his luggage and set off. Sirona stayed alone, quietly watching the place where the battle had just taken place. Chapter 60 Designing Sneak Shots of News Changes. This silence lasted for a long time. Land Shark just accompanied quietly as if he was used to it, without saying anything. After standing like this for more than 10 minutes, when the sound of rustling came from the distance, Sharona seemed to have just reacted and asked softly. Land Shark, if it was you who fought against Tyrannosaurus instead of the Flower Rock monster, do you think you can win? Ka. Hearing the question, Land Shark pondered for a few seconds and nodded. What if the level is the same as Tyrannosaurus? Land Shark pondered for a longer time this time, nodded first, and then immediately shook his head. I want to hear the truth. Land Shark was silent for a moment, and finally shook his head. Your potential is already the strongest in the Sinnoh region, and also the strongest in the world. It is definitely not much different from Tyrannosaurus, but it and Aoyagi have done things that we can't do. I think we still have a lot to learn. As Sharona spoke, Land Shark nodded slowly. Having followed Sirona since childhood, Land Shark knows that the trainer in front of him sometimes looks a little bit nervous, but has a very delicate mind. Many times she is not in a daze, but thinking about more things in her heart. Just like now, after experiencing failure, she began to sort out her thoughts and review the previous battle, find out all her problems, and correct them. This is also one of the reasons why her strength can be improved so quickly in addition to her talent. And Land Shark thought of the oppressive feeling brought by Tyrannosaurus just now, and the route that was destined to become the opponent. It is also necessary for it to learn and understand the opponent and defeat the opponent. So, one person and one dragon began to carefully recall and sort out the battle that had just happened. Until, when something seemed to pass through the bushes and made a rustling sound, Land Shark's eyes suddenly became sharp and looked at a certain position behind him. Ka. In response to the tip from the fanged Land Shark, Sharona did not look back, but continued to review the situation while calmly saying, I know, don't worry about them. Ka. I notified them to come. After Sharona said this, the fanged Land Shark did not ask any more questions, but just paid a little attention to observe. On the other side, in the corner of the bushes, a tall figure holding a camera and another thin figure who was also holding a camera were holding their cameras and constantly taking pictures of the place where Sharona was standing not far away and nearby. Ka. 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 Accompanied by a series of processed tiny sounds, one photo after another quickly appeared in the camera. The two kept switching pictures, and their faces showed smiles that could not be concealed. But when they saw each other, the smiles on their faces disappeared instantly, revealing a look of disgust that they wished the other party would die immediately. Why are you here? The old thin reporter said impatiently. I'm really curious about you being here, old man. The tall reporter immediately retorted without losing face. Didn't you say that there was nothing to pay attention to in the Lost Towers, and you were going to go to Vale City to shoot some meteorites to make some money? Why did you come here? What about the basic honesty and trustworthiness as a human being? Honesty and trustworthiness? Haha. The old reporter sneered, puffed up his chest and said, "The things you said were lost when I entered this industry. You still have the nerve to say." The tall reporter saw the old reporter's proud expression and wanted to teach him a lesson. But then he found that Sharona, who was standing not far away, had disappeared. "It's all your fault, old man, for missing such a good opportunity. Young people shouldn't be so arrogant." The old reporter waved his hand, weighed the camera in his hand and said, "Anyway, we have already taken the photos we need to take. We just need to take them back and organize them and send them out. It will definitely be more explosive than the news of the previous clearance of the Lost Tower." Hearing this, the tall reporter was silent for a moment, no longer paying attention to the old reporter, but picked up his camera and other things, and started running. The old reporter, who was a little confused, reacted for 2 seconds before realizing that this guy wanted to get the first-hand news before him, and hurried to catch up. But the difference in physical strength between the middle-aged and the elderly and the middle-aged is too great, so he can only linger far behind. At this time, in the air, a large bird with a very killer matte hairstyle, black, brown and white feathers all over its body, and a wingspan of nearly 2 meters is flapping its wings constantly, hovering in the air. On its feet, Sharona was holding its claws, watching the two reporters gradually leaving in the distance, and finally said to Mook Eagle, "Use the fierce storm to destroy the entire battlefield on the ground. There can't be any place where traces of fighting can be confirmed." Mook Eagle nodded and let out a long roar. As its huge wings flapped, a violent hurricane descended and landed on the place where Tyrannosaurus and Flower Rock Monster had just fought, blowing everything to pieces. Then, the man and the eagle disappeared in the sky. Half a day later, a piece of news quickly spread around the town of Random after 2 people passed the Lost Tower. "Have you heard? Miss Sharona, who cleared the Lost Tower before, is fighting with others by the creek in the south of the town. I just found out about it too. I've seen Miss Sharona and the photos of the scene, but I don't know who her opponent is. There have never been any strong trainers in Sui Town, let alone those of similar age. Could it be that Miss Sharona challenged a long-established trainer? I don't think so. If you really want to challenge, there's no need to come to Sui Town, and, isn't there a trainer of the same age who is quite strong recently? How could that be? Wait, are you talking about Qingliu who cleared the Lost Tower like Miss Sharona? That's impossible. Even if he cleared it, one was the fastest and the other was the slowest. There's no possibility at all, not to mention defeating Miss Sharona. Time doesn't mean anything, and I can't think of anyone else except him." After hearing this, everyone fell silent, because they had to admit that they really couldn't think of anyone. Besides, do you really think that the length of time can determine how powerful you are? The one in my family is usually faster, what's the use? Qingliu didn't know about the heated discussion around Sui Town. He had already left the scope of Sui Town and was now shuttling through the dense forest. "Qingliu, how long will we have to go?" Tyrannosaurus with 3 horns and blue stripes all over his body caught up and asked. Qingliu looked at the Tyrannosaurus in front of him, who was only 1 meter tall, and after looking at the map, he slowly said, "It's almost there, there's still the last section of the road. I originally said that I could write about Tyrannosaurus after the battle today, but it seems that I was wrong. After explaining the matter, I will write about Tyrannosaurus tomorrow. In addition, thank you to the Otaku Emperor for the 100 starting coins reward, thank you to Shining Rylu for the 1500 reward, thank you to Zihayahu for the 100 starting coins reward, and thank you to 20210927191832536 for the 500 starting coins reward." Chapter 61, Changes in the Divine Plan. Just pass through the dense forest in front of you, and you can almost resist the rocky terrain marked on the map. After passing through these mountains, you can reach Vale City. It has been a day since Qingliu and Tyrannosaurus fought and finally left Sui Town. During this day, Qingliu simply sorted out the route and started on the road. Sui Town is located in the hinterland of the Sinar region, on the right side of Xiangun Mountain. There are 2 relatively large cities around it. One is Jiayin City in the southwest, where Zuli went to challenge a monster and ended up being beaten up. The other is Vale City in the northeast. Since it has been decided to participate in the Lily of the Valley Conference, as long as there is nothing serious, it is natural to include whether the city has a gym in the investigation. Jiayin City has the Jiayin Gym, and Vale City also has the Vale Gym. Under the same preconditions, Qingliu thought that the gym trainer Melissa of Gaia Ray Gym is a guy who often skips work and travels. In order to avoid wasting time, Qingliu directly chose to go to Vale City. In addition to the gym factor, what attracted Qingliu the most was the most famous specialty of Vale City, stones. In addition to the local stones, Vale City also has several meteorites that were indirectly created when the legendary god of creation Arceus created the world in ancient times. Such stones are likely to meet the long history requirement of the panel. With such things, it is naturally more attractive than Gaia Ray City, which is known as a place where trainers and Pokemon communicate with each other heart to heart. He and Tyrannosaurus get along well, so there is no need to open up to each other anymore. Thinking of this, Qingliu immediately opened the information panel. Race, Tyrannosaurus, classification, dinosaur Pokemon, attributes, dragon, fire, features, sharp claws. Because the head and claws are too hard and sharp, the power of attacks using them will increase by 50%. Level 21. Exclusive moves, Super Flame, Fire type, Power 80, Sharp Claws, Fire type, Power 40, Super Blast, Fire type, Power 90, Tyrannosaurus Charge, Dragon type, Power 60, Mastered moves, none, Race stats, 510, Horsepower 88, Attack 101, Defense 90, Special Attack 95, Special Defense 70, Speed 66, Intimacy 75, Status, Normal, Information Summary, XXXXXX, Divine Plan, the daily status has been maintained through data compression. Do you want to decompress and enter the combat status? Yes, no. First of all, after defeating Sharona's Flower Rock monster, the level reached 21 without any surprises, and Qingliu even felt that it was very close to level 22. Secondly, there was a change in the Divine Plan column. Qingliu looked at Tyrannosaurus, who was standing beside him and had returned to height similar to Agumon. After the previous battle, the words compressed data began to appear in the column of the Holy Plan, and then a faint white light began to appear on Tyrannosaurus' body, and its size also shrank from nearly 5 meters to its current size. Tyrannosaurus, how do you feel now? Feeling. Tyrannosaurus looked around a little puzzled and said, nothing else, I just feel that it is much more convenient to move like this. Otherwise the ground will shake when I walk, and there are trees all around, and some places will itch when the branches poke them. Seeing that Tyrannosaurus did not feel uncomfortable, Qingliu nodded and then took out an energy block to let it replenish its physical strength. Since Tyrannosaurus himself felt that there was nothing wrong, and it was a reaction driven by the panel and the Holy Plan. In addition, Qingliu himself had tested it several times. When Tyrannosaurus switched between combat mode and daily mode, the compression and decompression of data were almost completed in an instant. After there was no obstacle, he no longer paid too much attention to this issue. After all, the source of Digimon is still data. Although it was smuggled by the panel and turned into Pokemon, it must still have data settings. This thing seems to be similar to computer files. If the thing is too big, it will be compressed, and it will be decompressed when it is needed. The only difference is the speed of operation. In other words, this is also a lot of benefits for him. In addition to being more concealed in some situations where he does not want to be discovered, he can also shrink when he is hungry to reduce his appetite. Otherwise, if he really uses Tyrannosaurus to eat, Qingliu estimates that the remaining more than 100,000 bonuses in his pocket will probably go bankrupt in a few days. Thinking of this, Qingliu couldn't help but think of the legendary beasts in those regions of the Pokemon world. In the illustrations and information, the tallest one is less than 10 meters, and the shorter one is 3 meters. Even the source of the Dynamax setting, the Infinity, is only about 20 meters. But almost every time they appear, the earth shakes and the sky changes color. Their bodies are so huge that they are as tall as high-rise buildings and mountains. Does it mean that they also have the ability to compress data like Tyrannosaurus now, to compress their own energy to reduce unnecessary consumption, and thus enter a state similar to hibernation, and will not activate their energy until they need to go all out and return to their normal form? Qingliu didn't know, but this conjecture is very likely. As for whether it is true or not, we will have a chance to verify it later. Qingliu was thinking, and suddenly found that Tyrannosaurus walking in front of him suddenly stopped. What's wrong? There are a lot of Pokemon in front, and they seem to be fighting. Tyrannosaurus replied with his eyes fixed on the distance. Qingliu looked in the direction where Tyrannosaurus pointed. It was an area completely different from the jungle. The ground was full of yellow sand and stones, and there were towering mountains ahead. It was the only way for them to go to Vale City, the rocky terrain. And the place where Tyrannosaurus was staring at was just below a mountain in the middle of the road. There was smoke and dust everywhere, and several figures were looming in the wind and sand. But the distance was too far. Qingliu couldn't see it clearly with his own eyes, and the panel couldn't detect any information. But the only thing that can be confirmed is that since they can still be seen from such a distance, these dozen Pokemon must be of considerable size, and they are just blocking the middle of the road. If we go up to them, we might be targeted and attacked, causing unnecessary trouble. Qingliu looked down at the map, and Tyrannosaurus followed suit, staring at the map. A minute later, they stood aside again in silence. Qingliu couldn't help but laugh and said, "It is said that Tyrannosaurus has a high IQ. I thought you would be a little better after your evolution, but the result is still the same. You put all your IQ into your physical fitness, right?" Tyrannosaurus scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "Qingliu, what should we do now?" Qingliu pondered for a moment and said, "The only shortcut is this one that goes straight through, and then there is another way to bypass the rock mountain, but it will take at least an extra week, and there is no need for us to waste that time. Let's just grow up." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Classic Cold Trainer. Walking out of the jungle and into the desert and Rocky Mountains, the climate suddenly became bad. The uneven sand and stones under his feet, the obviously rising temperature, and the wind blowing from time to time, all of which were constantly attacking Qingliu's physical strength and endurance. However, compared to Qingliu's discomfort, Tyrannosaurus seemed to have no feeling at all. Except for the occasional need to block the blowing sand and dust, he walked in front with a relaxed look and led the way. "Qingliu, do you want me to help you carry your backpack?" Tyrannosaurus also noticed Qingliu's condition and asked proactively. "Okay, take this thing with you." Qingliu took out 2 goggles from his backpack, put one on himself, and handed one to Tyrannosaurus. This was but as a spare when buying travel supplies in Sui Town. "I didn't expect it to come in handy so soon." Tyrannosaurus was full of curiosity about this novel thing, but he just kept staring at it, without any intention of wearing it. Qingliu stared at it. It stared at Qingliu. The atmosphere gradually became awkward in the strange silence. It was not until Qingliu saw Tyrannosaurus's 2 hands, each with 3 sharp claws, that he suddenly realized and said, "Ha ha ha ha, sorry, I forgot that you only have claws but no hands." After putting the goggles on Tyrannosaurus no longer had any worries and soon brought Qingliu to the vicinity of the Rocky Mountain. "Be careful." After signaling to Tyrannosaurus, Qingliu approached from the side and observed the Pokemon not far away through the rocks. "As long as I am sure there is no problem and the opponent's level is not too high, I will let Tyrannosaurus rush up. But the situation seems to be a little different from what I imagined." Bang! Boom! A roar sounded, followed by a burst of flying sand and rocks. A Pokemon with a body made up of dozens of gray rocks, with the rocks getting smaller and smaller from head to tail, and a body like a stone snake, is looking up with its head with the long rock horns, constantly tumbling on the ground and underground. Around it, there were more than 10 Pokemon that looked the same, watching motionlessly. Qingliu opened the panel and aimed at the one in the middle that was constantly moving. The other party's information appeared. Race, Onyx, Classification, Rock Snake Pokemon, Attributes, Ground, Rock, Features, Shatter Armor, when damaged by physical moves, defense will be reduced and speed will be greatly increased. Level, 17, Exclusive Moves, None, Mastered Moves, Rockfall, Bind, Harden, Impact, Shoot Down, Rock Grinding, Dragon Breath, Race Value, 385, Horsepower 35, Attack 45, Defense 160, Special Attack 30, Special Defense 45, Speed 70, Intimacy, 0, Status, Normal. Information Summary, it usually lives underground, twisting its body to dig a passage to move forward while absorbing hard ore to make its body stronger, and as time accumulates, its body will become darker and darker, and eventually become as hard as diamond. When moving underground, it moves very fast and makes a loud noise that can be spread far away. Horizontal ellipsis. More than 10 Onyxes, a group. After scanning the information of each Onyx, Qingliu's eyes finally returned to the one in the middle that was obviously larger and darker. And the Pokemon that was being attacked by it, with 2 large front teeth and a fluffy tail standing upright. Race, Onyx. Classification, Beaver Pokemon. Attributes, General, Water. Features, Unstable mood. Each time it fights, one ability value will increase significantly, while another will decrease. Level, 16. Exclusive moves, none. Mastered moves, Impact, Round, Roll, Lightning Flash, Headbutt. Race stats, 410, Horsepower 79, Attack 85, Defense 60, Special Attack 55, Special Defense 60, Speed 71, Intimacy, 0, Status, Injured. Information summary, known for its hard work, it likes to use its sharp teeth to chop down trees and branches to block rivers to build nests. Where it is, there is almost no flooding. It swims very fast in water, but is relatively slow on land. Horizontal ellipsis. Looking at the last piece of information, Qingliu finally understood why the raccoon was always at a disadvantage when the speed of the 2 races was almost the same. However, how could this Pokemon that lives by the river appear here? Qingliu didn't know. He and Tyrannosaurus watched quietly. As time went by, the raccoon's disadvantage gradually expanded. Especially after the ground nearby was all drilled out of the cave by Onyx, the raccoon encountered the biggest trouble. Onyx took off and drilled into the nearest cave, and all of them disappeared from sight. At the same time, a huge sound began to sound underground. This sound was like a monster approaching rapidly with a roar, which was frightening, and the raccoon in the middle was even more so. He looked around nervously. Then, accompanied by Onyx's roar, the ground began to shake violently. The raccoon knew that this was a sign of the opponent's attack, but there was nothing he could do. In the end, Onyx was directly hit into the air, and then Onyx's tail directly shot it down. Bang! With a muffled sound, the big-tailed raccoon fell to the ground, looking like he was seriously injured. He tried to stand up several times but failed. The big rock snake twisted its body and slowly approached, and was about to come to his side. Suddenly, a voice rang out. "Big-tailed raccoon, the enemy is almost in front of you, why don't you stand up to fight? Did the attack just now make you lose your fighting ability?" Hearing this voice, the big-tailed raccoon's body trembled uncontrollably twice, and then struggled to climb up little by little. "Use water gun." The voice rang again, and the big-tailed raccoon began to accumulate water energy in his mouth with a painful expression, preparing to use the water gun technique. But the big rock snake obviously would not give it a chance. After quickly approaching, it stretched out its tail and tied up the big-tailed raccoon. The body made of pieces of rock began to twist and squeeze. This huge force caused the big-tailed raccoon's just condensed water gun technique to disintegrate instantly, and the severe pain made it struggle constantly, emitting a wail. The big rock snake was unmoved by these voices. Qingliu was not surprised by this. He would definitely not hold back in a fight. But what he did not expect was that the human who looked like the raccoon trainer did not seem to care at all. Instead, after a moment of silence, his voice came again. "I asked you to use the water gun, not to make some meaningless noises. There should be a limit to the difference in strength. Don't waste my time anymore, you idiot." Chapter 63 Diverting Trouble. Mida. Hearing the scolding, the raccoon forced himself to hold back his cry, and under the continuous pressure on his body, he recondensed the water energy. Onyx would naturally not let the raccoon attack, and the binding technique was retracted again. The severe pain hit, and the raccoon's water gun technique was aborted again. He let out a cry of pain, but it seemed that he was afraid of the trainer's scolding, so he quickly closed his mouth and forced himself to hold it back. But the owner of the voice was obviously not satisfied with all this, and the low and cold words sounded again. "You can't interrupt the training of the technique even if you are attacked. I think I have done it for you many times. I will give you one last chance. If you can't do it, you can leave by yourself." When the raccoon heard this, an anxious look appeared on his face. He immediately completely ignored his injuries and began to struggle violently. In this outburst, it was as if his potential was suddenly stimulated, and he actually pushed Onyx's binding away a little from the inside. Taking advantage of this gap, the water energy surged, and a water gun sprayed out, hitting Onyx in the face. No how. Under this sudden burst of attack, Onyx's dull roar instantly resounded around, and then, the body slowly fell down. Without Onyx's tight binding, the raccoon successfully escaped, but the continuous injuries and the desperate burst of counterattack just now had already exhausted the body, and it could not stand it all and collapsed to the ground. But it still raised its head stubbornly and looked at the trainer who was walking slowly in front of it. However, the expected words of praise and recognition did not come, and the tone was still very cold. You don't think that it is something to be proud of to fight like this when the attributes are absolutely superior, right? The joy on the raccoon's face solidified instantly, and then slowly lowered his head. Next time if you perform like this again, you can disappear directly in front of me. With a flash of red light, the raccoon was taken back by the Poké Ball, and a young man with long hair tied at the back of his neck and an indifferent face slowly appeared in the wind and sand. Faced with a group of Onyxes that had lost their leader and were beginning to riot, he released a Mook and took the initiative to attack the group of Onyxes. Seeing this, Qingliu frowned slightly. Using Mook, which was of similar level and whose attributes were restrained by Onyx, to fight against a large number of people with a small number of people, there was no possibility of winning even if it could fly. It was not until Qingliu saw Mook flying around without launching any actual attack, only harassing in the sky, and constantly trying to attract the attention of the Onyx group away from the boy's location, that he determined the purpose of sending it out. Do you want to lead them away and get away? But, why does this guy look so familiar? Qingliu said to himself. Whether it was the tone of his voice, his indifferent attitude towards the status of his Pokémon, or even his appearance, why did he feel so familiar? When Qingliu was recalling where this familiar feeling came from, he heard the question of Tyrannosaurus. Qingliu, was it really right for the guy who just treated his companion like that? Qingliu turned his head and looked at Tyrannosaurus. The expression of the Tyrannosaurus next to him was serious, and his scarlet eyes were staring forward, revealing an undisguised anger. Compared to himself, Tyrannosaurus didn't have so many thoughts, and was more simple and direct, expressing emotions in the same way, and he had a stronger sense of justice. Now seeing this trainer who didn't care about his Pokémon and treated it as a tool instead of a partner, it was reasonable for him to get angry. Semi-military training is necessary, but if you really want to break through the limit, you still have to rely on the unbreakable bond between the trainer and the Pokémon. His current behavior has gone astray. Aoyagi said slowly. Although Aoyagi didn't completely agree with Dialga's hold-on, stand-up fighting style, at least his general policy was fine. The attitudes of the famous gym trainers, the 4 heavenly kings, and the strongest champions in each region towards Pokémon are the best evidence. Tyrannosaurus retracted his gaze and looked at Qingliu and said, then should we stop this behavior? Qingliu shook his head in the doubtful eyes of Tyrannosaurus and said, no one will change their mind because of 2 casual words. This is not realistic. Moreover, this matter itself has nothing to do with us. But, Tyrannosaurus hesitated, but he chose to listen to Qingliu's words, but his eyes could not help but stare at the center of the battlefield. Qingliu looked at Tyrannosaurus, and then looked at the boy who was scolding Mook for failing to lead Onyx away. After thinking for a moment, he shook his head helplessly. Finally, he pointed to the stone in front of him as a shelter and said, Tyrannosaurus, stand on it. Huh? Tyrannosaurus did not react, but his body still did it directly. He jumped to the top of the stone and stood there swaggeringly. This figure that suddenly appeared in the field of vision was soon noticed by Mook flying in the sky. Although it was blocked by the wind and sand and could not be seen clearly, it seemed to it that a suspected wild Pokémon had appeared in the battle range. It quickly reported to its trainer. The cold boy squinted his eyes and noticed this scene. He immediately ordered, Muckbird, fly over there, and then use Blowfly to blow up all the sand on the ground. Muckbird vibrated its wings, turned around and rushed straight to the location of Tyrannosaurus. The angry Onyx below saw this scene and twisted their bodies to chase on the ground. This scene fell into Tyrannosaurus's eyes, and he immediately turned his head to look at Aoyagi. Why are they suddenly coming towards us, Aoyagi? What should we do now? Maybe they want to divert the trouble to you, so that you are forced to escape to help him contain these Onyx, Aoyagi said slowly. Why is this guy so bad? What should we do now, Aoyagi? Just run. Tyrannosaurus jumped down from the stone and asked hurriedly. As soon as he finished speaking, Muckbird had already flown over his head. Onyx on the ground followed closely behind, and the movement of their huge bodies caused the ground to shake. The next moment, Mook stopped and turned in midair, flapping its wings quickly and violently, rolling up the sand and stones on the ground to form a small sandstorm that enveloped all the Onyx. Mook used the sand and dust that blocked its vision to quickly fly away, leaving behind more than a dozen Onix that were chasing after it and were somewhat confused, constantly moving to find Mook. If this continues, it will probably find the location of Aoyagi and Tyrannosaurus soon. Seeing this, Tyrannosaurus said hurriedly, "Aoyagi, we are about to be surrounded by these guys, let's run." Aoyagi slowly smiled at Tyrannosaurus's anxious tone and expression. "Run? Why run? Aoyagi?" Tyrannosaurus looked at Aoyagi in confusion. "Before, when it had nothing to do with me, I didn't want to care, but now that trouble has come to me, how can I turn a blind eye to it?" Tyrannosaurus, don't stand there. Get into combat mode. Thanks to Billing Beast for the 1,500 point reward. Thanks to 2022122011110327 for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Lulutwang for the 100 point reward. And 202109232225048441 for the 500 point reward. The total amount is 2,200 points, and there is still 2,800 points left for additional chapters. The monthly ticket is only 160, and there is still 40 points left for additional chapters to reach 200. Chapter 64, Wolves Among the Flock. Tyrannosaurus' brain didn't react for a while, but when he saw the smile on Qingliu's face and what he just said, he was immediately happy and said, "Thank you, Qingliu." Qingliu waved his hand, looked around at the dozen or so Onix that were approaching, and finally looked past them, looking at the Mook and the indifferent boy who saw that Onix was attracted away and quickly left, and their figures gradually faded away. Then he said to them, "If the guys in front of you know what's good for you, then don't worry about them. If there's any abnormal movement, solve them all." After explaining clearly, Qingliu pulled out the panel and chose to let Tyrannosaurus leave the daily state and decompress into the combat state. The sacred plan in his hand emitted a pure light, which echoed the light emitted from Tyrannosaurus. The next second, Tyrannosaurus' body began to swell, and almost instantly Tyrannosaurus recovered from 1 meter to 5 meters, and its body size was even larger. The surrounding Onix saw this Pokemon that suddenly appeared, and immediately thought it was an enemy, and all of them quickly twisted their bodies and moved towards this side. Facing the rolling momentum and smoke, Tyrannosaurus did not show any fear. He turned slightly and took a stance, letting out a roar that shook the earth. Roar. The huge volume even shook the sand and stones on the ground in the echo. All the nearby Onix that were approaching were shocked at this moment and looked at Tyrannosaurus in surprise. But soon, without the command of their leader, they directly regarded Tyrannosaurus as the culprit who attacked their leader, and they all let out low roars and charged straight away. The momentum created by more than a dozen Onix acting together was still very terrifying. The terrain was originally sandy and rocky, and the swaying bodies when charging brought rolling smoke and dust. Tyrannosaurus grabbed Qingliu, jumped to a safe place, and then returned to the battlefield. Tyrannosaurus, try to resolve the battle as quickly as possible, otherwise it will be difficult to attack after that guy enters the city. First, use Tyrannosaurus charge on the one on the left. Qingliu reminded. Tyrannosaurus nodded, and then faced the Onix that was sprinting from all directions. Seeing the Onix that Qingliu mentioned, he launched a counterattack. The Onix obviously didn't expect Tyrannosaurus to suddenly counterattack like this, but this surprise disappeared in just a moment, and all of them continued to attack while maintaining their forward posture. The distance between the two sides quickly shortened during the movement, becoming closer and closer, until they collided completely. Bang! Exclamation mark. A violent energy explosion sounded, and the Onix that was targeted had no ability to stop Tyrannosaurus at all. It was instantly knocked back 10 to 20 meters and fell to the ground and lost consciousness. What Qingliu didn't expect was that this collision didn't even consume much energy from Tyrannosaurus' charge. Tyrannosaurus turned around and started a new sprint. Bang! There was another muffled sound, and another Onix was knocked away. In just a few seconds, two companions lost their combat effectiveness. This situation of killing instantly made the remaining Onix even more angry, and 5 of them continued to use collision to launch attacks. Of the remaining 6, half gave up the collision and instead turned their bodies around, turning into a huge ball and rolling to charge, while the other half used their tails to grab stones and rocks on the ground and threw them at Tyrannosaurus with all their strength. Rolling and falling rocks. Glancing at all the attacks, Tyrannosaurus took a big step and rushed up the rocky mountain next to him, then suddenly used his strength to jump up with the help of the reaction force. The next second, Countless rocks all hit the place where Tyrannosaurus just stood. At this time, 3 rolling Onixes rushed to the front. Tyrannosaurus, use sharp claws. The orange light quickly covered the 2 huge claws of Tyrannosaurus that had undergone drastic changes after evolution, and then directly slapped the 3 Onixes. Although the sharp claws did not advance with the evolution like the small flame and small blast after evolution, and the power did not change, compared to the Agumon period, Tyrannosaurus's own physical fitness has undergone earth-shaking changes. The sharp claws slashed through the air, making a series of sounds of breaking through the air, and directly hit the rolling Onix with 1 hand each. Z. Swish. A sharp sound caused by rapid friction sounded in an instant, and disappeared in an instant. The 2 Onix were slammed into the ground by Tyrannosaurus claws without any pause. At this time, the last Onix that rolled over found the gap of Tyrannosaurus, who had just swung his hands and had not yet retracted them. It directly accelerated its rotation and jumped into the air with the help of the stones raised by the ground, and then hit Tyrannosaurus' head fiercely. Seeing this, Qingliu couldn't help but smile. You seized the opportunity very well. Take advantage of the gap between Tyrannosaurus' hands when the old strength of Tyrannosaurus has gone and the new strength has not yet been generated to launch an attack. If other Pokemon were here, you might really be able to deal some damage. But unfortunately, it was Tyrannosaurus that appeared here. And the place it chose to attack was exactly Tyrannosaurus' head. The head with 3 huge sharp horns and covered with the brown scales is the hardest and most aggressive part of the body. If it had chosen another place, it might have been able to cause harm. But unfortunately, it only had 1 chance, and it chose the wrong one. Without Qingliu's command, Tyrannosaurus was not afraid of the attack, and raised its head and charged head-on. Swish. A thin and sharp sound, like a sword cutting through stone, rang out. The sharp horns barely paused for a moment, and easily pierced through the hard stone that Onix was proud of, forcibly interrupting its rolling, forking it between the 3 large horns on its head, and then throwing it aside. After dealing with the 3 Onix that were close to it, Tyrannosaurus attacked again. Tyrannosaurus, who was level 21 and had extremely high physical fitness, almost crushed this group of Onix that were no more than level 16. Especially after Tyrannosaurus discovered that Onix was nearly 10 meters long, he directly grabbed one of them and held it between his claws, and began to whip the remaining 8 Onix. The sounds of the earth shaking and huge rocks colliding violently rang out frequently, and finally subsided with dull roars, and Tyrannosaurus also put down the weapon in his hand. After confirming that all 13 Onix had lost their combat ability, Qingliu prepared to let Tyrannosaurus start the chase, but before he opened his mouth, he felt a violent dragon energy brewing. Qingliu quickly glanced at Tyrannosaurus, and Tyrannosaurus obviously looked over with great confusion. Not Tyrannosaurus? Then who is it? Qingliu looked around quickly, but before he could determine the location, the violent dragon energy flew over at an extremely fast speed. There is one more update. Chapter 65 Chasing Encounter. Roar. Facing this sudden attack, Tyrannosaurus was not afraid, and took a step forward, condensing fire energy in his mouth and firing super flames to meet the attack. Chi. The huge flames accompanied by high temperature almost instantly smashed the violent dragon energy into pieces, and then flew towards the place where the attack came from without slowing down. Bang! An explosion sounded, and the super flame hit, and the surrounding area instantly turned into a sea of fire. However, what was a bit unexpected about Qingliu was that after being hit head-on, although the opponent looked seriously injured and his body was shaky, he still insisted on raising his head to prevent himself from falling. It was offset a little by the Dragon-type moves, and because of the rock attribute, there was no one move to kill it. Qingliu said to himself as he watched the big rock snake with a slightly black body gradually disappearing as the flames gradually appeared. This was the leader of the big rock snake group who fainted after being hit in the face by the big-tailed raccoon water gun. Seeing that there was dragon breath in its move column, Qingliu also confirmed that it was it that launched the attack just now. No how. The leader of Onix panted and roared. It was just overwhelmed by the water-based moves. When it woke up and was ready to beat up the guy who knocked it out, it found that the target of revenge was gone, replaced by a big dinosaur. All its subordinates were knocked to the ground by it, leaving it alone. This was intolerable. Onix dragged its seriously injured body and charged. Make it quiet down. Qingliu's voice fell, and before Onix rushed over, Tyrannosaurus had already rushed to it, raised its sharp claws and slammed it into the ground, then grabbed its middle part that could barely be called the waist, and pressed it to the ground. No how. Net how. The leader of Onix kept struggling, but with its already crushed combat power and injured state, it was impossible for him to break free, and he could only resist helplessly. It was not until Tyrannosaurus was too annoying and sat on its neck, putting all its weight on it, that Onix lost its ability to struggle and could only stare at Qingliu with angry eyes. Qingliu completely ignored its gaze and said, "I don't want to beat you up for no reason. It's your subordinates who are very ignorant and are looking for trouble. But considering that your experience packs have helped Tyrannosaurus to level up, I will let you go this time and not do it again." As soon as the voice fell, Onix was about to struggle to protest, but suddenly felt its body being squeezed heavily. Tyrannosaurus put its two hands together and grabbed the gap in the rock of its body. Its sharp claws had already scratched the surface of its body. If it didn't agree, Onix felt that it would be pinched in two in the next second. At this moment of life and death, Onix fully expressed its heart, nodded very quickly, and its body immediately calmed down. Seeing this, Tyrannosaurus grabbed Onix and threw it to the place where more than 10 Onix were lying next to it. "Qingliu, what should we do next?" Tyrannosaurus asked, looking at the deep rocky mountains in the distance where no trace could be seen. "Of course we have caught up. Just keep going at full speed." "Okay." Tyrannosaurus bent down, held Qingliu in his hands, and then started running wildly. Although Tyrannosaurus is not fast, compared with fast and small Pokémon, its size is really too big. Almost one big stride is equivalent to 10 to 20 steps of small Pokémon, so its speed in catching up is not weaker than other Pokémon. It's just that every step it takes will cause an earthquake. Qingliu sat in the palm of Tyrannosaurus, raising his hand to block the wind and sand blowing through the gap in Tyrannosaurus's protection. His eyes couldn't help but fall on Tyrannosaurus's claws. After thinking for a moment, his brows slowly frowned. "Why do I feel that this claw looks a little bigger than yesterday? Is it an illusion?" On the other side. Muku. The mook bird circled in the sky, making a sound. Lacey knew that this was a signal that he was safe, and his expression relaxed a little. It seemed that the unknown Pokémon that suddenly appeared had helped him to track the firepower of the Onix tribe. But soon he thought of something, took out a Poké Ball from his pocket, and his expression quickly became cold. "You almost didn't beat Onix with a similar level, what a useless thing." Lacey cursed expressionlessly. If it weren't for the precedent of being able to control the mood swings, training a Pokémon of this level would delay my departure time. He would capture this Pokémon, the raccoon, because by chance, he found that it could freely control the mood swings to bring about the strengthening and weakening of its abilities at certain times. It only needs to freely choose the strengthening and weakening items of its abilities according to the situation during the battle. This flexible change can definitely improve the combat effectiveness by several levels. But since it was captured, it seems to have failed, and this situation has never happened again. Even training has not made any progress, and the training of the mood swings has always stagnated. This time, he challenged the Onix tribe on land to see if he could stimulate it to change under pressure, but now it seems that not only did he waste his time, but he almost couldn't get away. Next month, we will set off to challenge the gym in the Kanto region. If you still haven't made any progress by then, you'll have to pray for the best. Lacey said coldly to the Poké Ball, and without caring about the reaction in the ball, he directly put it in his pocket and prepared to leave. But soon he found something wrong. The ground began to vibrate constantly from an unknown time, and the fine sand and gravel under his feet also shook, as if something was hitting the ground, or some huge monster was running. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook more violently, and there were bursts of dull sounds of giants stepping on the ground. From the sound, the distance was still getting shorter and shorter, and I'm afraid it won't be long before they meet. Thinking of this, Lacey's expression became solemn. "Muckbird, go check out what's going on." Lacey gave the order, and Muckbird flapped its wings and flew forward. But before it flew far, it discovered that in the rocks not far away, a huge monster with ferocious horns was approaching with big strides. Seeing this, Muckbird hurriedly flapped its wings to stop its forward momentum and was about to make a cry to warn. But the next second, a huge fireball passed through the distance barrier and flew in front of it, interrupting its action directly. I fell asleep, so the update is late, but not completely late. Chapter 66, Disparity in Strength. Mucko, swallow return. Lacey shouted loudly. Mucko flapped its wings just before the super flames came at it, and at the same time, it turned upward with the help of the wind and avoided the attack. Seeing that Mucko had successfully distanced itself, Lacey closed his eyes and slowed down his breathing. The attack just now was too fast. Lacey didn't have as far vision as Mucko, but he was focused and naturally saw the fast-coming fireball. Fortunately, he successfully used Swallow Return, otherwise he would not be able to avoid it with other moves. Moreover, Lacey looked at Mucko's tail feathers, where a piece of the gray-white feathers had been burned. It became like this just by being swept by the heat wave. If it was hit directly, it would have lost its combat effectiveness. It's fast, and the size of the fireball is so big. What kind of Pokemon is it, and why did it take the initiative to attack? Or was it coming for him? Lacey was unsure. The only thing he was sure of was that if he rashly sent Mook to investigate the situation, he might lose a Pokemon if he was slow to react next time. Pokemon that were too weak could be replaced by new ones, but now the situation was unclear, and he had to rationally plan the combat power of each Pokemon in his hands, and not waste any of them. Then Lacey let Mook fly back to his side and quietly looked at the road between the rocks not far away. The sound that shook the ground was also approaching. Boom boom boom. Boom boom. Boom. Suddenly, the huge footsteps seemed to disappear, the ground stopped shaking, and everything seemed to have returned to its previous calm. Gone? Or something else? Lacey was confused about whether to let Mook go to check the situation, but soon, a collision sound that was more violent and larger than before was heard. Bang! The ground began to shake violently, and even Lacey almost lost his balance. What on earth is that? No one answered him, and the only answer he got was the huge vibrations that were almost the same in time. After repeating this several times, Lacey finally saw the maker of these sounds, a giant dinosaur with huge sharp horns and a body covered with blue lines. At this moment, this huge Pokemon was running with its body tilted, and then with a jump, its right foot stepped on the outside of the rock mountain, and with the help of the reaction force, its body suddenly jumped to another rock mountain dozens of meters away, and its left foot stepped on the rock mountain again, and its body instantly jumped dozens of meters away. It actually used the rock mountain as a pedal? Lacey couldn't help but be shocked, and the Mook next to him was also surprised that it even slowed down the speed of flapping its wings. After a few jumps, it crossed a distance of 100 or 200 meters and landed on the open space in front of Lacey. The dull loud noise mixed with sand and dust blew Lacey and Mook back again and again. However, Lacey quickly adjusted himself, stretched out his hand to block the wind and sand, and raised his head to look at the terrifying Pokemon standing in front of him. The huge shadow cast by its huge body had already enveloped his entire body. Then he found that he had never seen or learned a similar Pokemon before. Lacey took out the Pokemon Pokédex from his pocket. In the silence that lasted for more than 10 seconds, the Pokédex remained motionless until finally an emotionless electronic sound was heard. No information. It is a mysterious Pokemon, a Pokemon that has not been included. It looks like it is eligible to be captured. Lacey took out a few empty Poké Balls and threw one at Tyrannosaurus Rex tentatively. But just as it flew into the air and before it could open, Tyrannosaurus Rex's tail covered with ferocious patterns lashed at the Poké Ball. Bang! The Poké Ball broke into several pieces and scattered all over the ground. Lacey was not surprised at all. He took out all the Poké Balls containing Pokemon from his pocket and was about to take action when a voice suddenly interrupted him. Sorry, it is already my partner and probably won't accept your invitation. Lacey was stunned by the human voice and immediately looked at the place where the sound came from, the palm of the giant dinosaur in front of him. A handsome boy, about 14 or 15 years old, wearing black casual clothes. Since it is a Pokemon you have already captured, why are you still chasing me? Lacey asked slowly. Hearing this, Qingliu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. You know I am chasing you, why don't you run away? Can I run away? Qingliu shook his head slowly. Lacey said expressionlessly, since you can't run away, there is no need to waste time and energy. That said, people who can still do this when they really encounter something are not ordinary. Although the attitude of this guy in front of him towards Pokemon is not pleasing, his IQ and calm attitude are very good. However, this does not mean that he should be let go. In this case, let's not waste time, apologize first, and then I will beat you. Apologize? Why? Have you forgotten who helped you attract the attention of those Onyx just now? Hearing this, Lacey suddenly remembered the Pokemon that suddenly appeared when he saw it under the reminder of Mook. From the looks, it seems to be a little bit similar, but the wind and sand were too strong to see clearly. And the body size is definitely not like this now, otherwise he would definitely not be able to recognize it, but since the other party caught up, it means that there must be some connection. Weak Pokemon will be eliminated by nature sooner or later. What I did is also a way for them to shine. You can apologize to me, but you can talk to me after you beat me. After Lacey finished speaking, he directly commanded Mook to attack. Use Lightning Flash to rush forward, and then use Wings to attack. Go! Mook vibrated its wings violently, and a bright white light was dragged behind its body. At the same time, its two wings spread out in a straight line and rushed towards Tyrannosaurus. Seeing this scene, Qingliu laughed. Knowing the difference in strength, you still have the courage to take the initiative to attack. It's a very courageous act. The difference in strength does not mean that there is no chance of winning, and since we haven't fought, who knows if there is really a difference in strength? Lacey replied expressionlessly. Really? Qingliu glanced at the MK bird that had already rushed forward, and said to Tyrannosaurus, deal with it. Tyrannosaurus did not speak, nor did he pay attention to the attacking MK bird. He bent down and put Qingliu on the ground, then swung his huge tail, as if impatiently slapping a harassing mosquito, and slapped it directly on the MK bird. With a muffled sound, the lightning flash and wing attack used by the MK bird, which was still rushing forward, did not have any effect at all. In an instant, the normal energy and flying energy were drained away, and the body fell from the sky and finally fell to the ground, with his eyes rolled back and lost the ability to fight. Now you should believe what I said about the disparity in strength, right? Lacey looked at this scene, and his face suddenly became ugly. Chapter 67 No One is a Fool. Taking a deep breath, Lacey took out the second Poké Ball with his anger hidden. Big-tailed raccoon, prepare for battle. The Poké Ball opened, and a flash of red light flashed. Big-tailed raccoon, still with injuries, appeared on the field, staring at the opponent with sharp eyes. At the same time, two completely different faint lights appeared on its hands, feet and body, and it immediately looked at Lacey with some excitement. Characteristics: unstable mood. After entering the battle, one of the ability values increases sharply, and the other decreases sharply. Lacey glanced at Big-tailed Raccoon and said, "What's there to be happy about in a matter of luck?" Big-tailed Raccoon's mood suddenly dropped. Rush forward in a flash. Big-tailed Raccoon endured the intense pain caused by the injury, and a white light lit up behind it. Its body instantly shot out like a cannonball and rushed towards Tyrannosaurus. Seeing the sudden burst of speed of the big-tailed raccoon, which was far beyond what he had seen before, Qingliu also recognized the bonus brought by the characteristics, and said to himself, "Unstable mood plus lightning flash, this speed is not bad." Then, just watching the distance between the big-tailed raccoon and them shorten rapidly, whether it is Qingliu or Tyrannosaurus, there is no reaction, just standing there motionless. Lacey saw this scene of complete contempt or even ignoring him. His face was full of anger, and he almost gritted his teeth and said, "Keep rushing forward, use your headbutt with all your strength." Mida. The big-tailed raccoon immediately straightened his body, and with the help of the lightning flash and the speed bonus of the unstable mood, he rushed to the chest of Tyrannosaurus in almost an instant and directly hit it. Bang! A crisp collision sound rang out. Tyrannosaurus was stunned for a moment, and looked down at the big-tailed raccoon with a big bulge on his head in confusion. After hesitating for a moment, he raised his claws and slapped it directly. The big-tailed raccoon instantly fell on the lying mook bird and fainted. The second one, do you want to continue? Qingliu looked at Lacey and said calmly. Lacey's chest rose and fell rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and he took out the third Poké Ball. A blue and purple scorpion Pokémon with hooks on its forelimbs and white pincers on the tip of its tail appeared in front of him. Race: Pincer Tail Scorpion. Classification: Scorpion Pokémon. Attributes: Poison, Bug. Features: Battle Armor, protected by hard armor. It will not be hit by attacks on vital parts. Level: 17. Exclusive moves: None. Mastered moves: Poison Needle, Poison Fang, Bite, Poison Spike, Rock Blockade. Hold on. Race value: 330, horsepower 40, physical attack 50, defense 90, special attack 30, special defense 55, speed 65, intimacy 0, status normal, Information summary: a Pokemon that lives on dry land and has very strong endurance. It can ambush prey all year round without eating or drinking. Both its tail and claws are filled with deadly poison. Once it strikes, it will not let go unless the opponent falls down due to poison. Did you know that Tyrannosaurus has powerful fire-type moves and insect-type moves? Qingliu quickly scanned the information board and said. Lacey seemed not to hear it and gave orders on his own. Pincer, Rock Blockade. The heavy yellow energy of the rock type was brewing in front of the two hook-shaped hands of the pincer. Too slow. Qingliu glanced and said, Tyrannosaurus, Super Flame. The next second, a huge ball of fire flew out, quickly passed through the distance in the middle of the venue, and accurately hit the pincer before the rock blockade was completely formed. The scorching flames and the terrifying high temperature made the insect-type pincer look extremely painful under the double attack. The body was shaky, but it did not fall down completely, and even the movements of the hands did not show any intention of stopping. It was as if there was a strange force supporting it. Seeing this, Qingliu's eyes fell on hold on in the move list of Scorpion, and his eyes gradually narrowed. The next second, more than 10 boulders mobilized by rock energy flew out and landed around Tyrannosaurus. The originally spacious space instantly became crowded. This exhausted all of Scorpion's physical strength, and it could no longer hold on, and finally fainted from exhaustion. Seeing this, Lacey took back the 3 fallen Pokemon without any hesitation, and quickly threw out the 4th Poké Ball, a Pokemon that was nearly 2 meters tall and in a purple state. Race, Devourer. Classification, Poison Pokemon. Attribute, Poison. Feature, Sludge. Pokemon that absorbs the physical strength of Devourer, which is protected by Sludge, will be hurt by the stench. Level 20. Exclusive moves, none. Mastered moves, Sludge Attack, Toxic Gas, Acid Bomb, Turbid Mist, Ultimate Absorb, Charge, Spray. Race value, 467, Horsepower 100, Attack 73, Defense 83, Special Attack 73, Special Defense 83, Speed 55, Intimacy, 0, Status, Normal. Information summary: it has a very big mouth and can swallow anything as long as it can fit in its mouth. Its gastric juice is highly corrosive, and it is good at spitting out gastric juice containing toxins to attack. Unlike the previous 3 times, almost the moment the Poké Ball was opened, Lacey quickly said, use Turbid Mist. Devourer began to open its mouth and inhale before landing. After expanding its body into a big fat man, it spit out a cloud of black turbid mist towards Tyrannosaurus. Just by looking at the rich purple color in the mist, one can understand the toxicity contained in it. Greymon, blow it back. Although Greymon does not have a body that can expand, it has a huge body and strong lung capacity. It opened its bloody mouth and blew out a large airflow, blowing the turbid mist back. At this moment, in the turbid mist that was so turbid that nothing could be seen, a green energy tentacle flew out at an extremely tricky angle and rushed towards Greymon. Greymon instinctively wanted to dodge, but the huge rocks that fell from the rock blockade around it seriously hindered its speed. The tentacles split into 3 sections in the air and tightly wrapped around Greymon's body. At the same time, it began to flash green light, like a pump to draw some huge energy from Greymon, and continuously transmitted it back to the black fog through the tentacles. This is the ultimate absorption. Qingliu looked at the tentacles that kept draining away Greymon's physical strength, and looked at the Devourer who gradually appeared in the black fog. At this moment, because it has absorbed enough physical strength, coupled with the power accumulating moves combined with its own body structure, its size has begun to grow rapidly, breaking through 3 meters, and is still expanding. A strong aura is also brewing invisibly. Lacey, who is standing on the devouring beast, has returned to an expressionless look. He looks at Qingliu quietly, and the anger on his face has disappeared, as if the look of extreme anger and frequent stupid moves under the beating just now has never appeared. Chapter 68, Taking Advantage of the Situation. Sensing Qingliu's gaze, Lacey turned his head slightly, with a hint of sarcasm on his lips. Pokemon battles are not just about Pokemon, trainers are also a necessary part of it. With such an expression and such words, it is obvious that his previous performance was all a fake. So all your performances just now were to mislead me, to make me think that you were commanding the transformation under the crushing of your full strength? Yes. What a clear mind, you made a battle plan in such a short time. Qingliu smiled and praised and clapped his hands, ignoring the Tyrannosaurus that was still being absorbed, and continued, Using 2 Pokemon as cannon fodder and your own acting skills, I was paralyzed and careless. Then relying on the characteristics of the hard armor of the Scorpion and the tenacious will of the race, combined with the ability to hold on to the moves, resisting a super flame while using the rock blockade to block Tyrannosaurus's escape space, and finally using this devourer that evolved prematurely for unknown reasons to launch a counterattack. Relying on the characteristics of Deverman itself, combined with super absorption, absorbing Tyrannosaurus Rex's physical strength, its size has increased dramatically while possessing stronger combat power. If I'm not mistaken, you plan to use the spray at the end to release a full-strength attack, right? Hearing Qingliu clearly state his battle plan so quickly, Lacey's expression became more serious. It's okay that he reacted so quickly, but the key point is, what does such a nonchalant look mean? Thinking of this, Lacey couldn't help but have an uneasy premonition in his heart. Seeing that I said it so quickly and accurately, you feel something is wrong? So, have you ever thought that I knew your plan from the beginning? Hearing this, Lacey's expression suddenly couldn't hold back. Since the other party knew, why did he still cooperate with him? Was there another powerful Pokemon as a trump card, or was there some trick? Lacey's eyes instantly fell on Devourer. Seeing that the ultimate absorption was still continuing and Devourer's size was still growing, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. No matter why the other party used the same trick, as long as Devourer was fine, he still had the strength to fight. Wait? A question suddenly flashed through Lacey's mind. The ultimate absorption has been going on for so long, why didn't the other party mean to break free? And Lacey's eyes fell on Tyrannosaurus. The 3 ultimate absorption tentacles were still absorbing Tyrannosaurus's physical strength, but Tyrannosaurus, except for a slightly painful expression, there was no sign of weakness at all, just like a bottomless pit with abundant physical strength. How is it possible? Even the most powerful Pokemon has a limit to its physical strength, it's just a matter of more or less. As long as it is still a Pokemon, as long as it has not entered the category of legendary Pokemon, it is impossible to escape from this law. But this scene that seriously deviates from logic did happen in front of him. While continuously absorbing physical strength, the opponent is still standing firmly. Because the source has not been exhausted, the size of the Devourer has continued to grow. At this time, the size of the Tyrannosaurus has surpassed that of the Tyrannosaurus, and it is still changing in a larger direction. But this has obviously exceeded the limit that it can bear. No. It can't go on, otherwise it will get out of control. Devourer, cancel the ultimate absorption, and then use the spray attack. Hearing Lacey's order, the Devourer immediately loosened the tentacles that tightly bound Tyrannosaurus and prepared to pull it back. But what Lacey didn't expect was that the Tyrannosaurus, whose physical strength was drained, took the initiative to reach out and grab the tentacles, and forcibly retained it. How can you come and go as you please? If you can't eat it when you come, just pack it up and take it away. Qingliu said with a smile. I'm sorry, but as a Digimon, Tyrannosaurus Rex has almost unlimited moves and physical strength as long as it is not hungry. And before coming to this rocky mountain, it had just had a full meal. Tyrannosaurus Rex continued to release physical strength and energy, actively supplying it to the tentacles of Devourer of the Ultimate Absorption. This made Devourer of the Ultimate Absorption, which was already on the verge of saturation, expand its size again, and a terrifying aura of danger was bred in its body. At this moment, Lacey's expression changed completely. Devourer of the Ultimate Absorption, quickly cancel the energy supply of the Ultimate Absorption, and then use all your strength to spray. With such a huge body and energy, he still has the possibility of turning the tables as long as he successfully uses the moves. But what he didn't expect was that the Devourer, who had never absorbed such a huge amount of energy, had already reached a severely bloated level. It had no way to digest it and had lost absolute control of its body at this moment. While he was adjusting and preparing to spray the moves, Tyrannosaurus had already sprinted in front of him, and its tail covered with ferocious blue lines slapped the Devourer's abdomen heavily, directly shaking the swollen body. The sudden pain stimulated the Devourer to retreat, but also indirectly helped to release some energy. The Devourer raised its mouth and sprayed out the moves quickly. But Tyrannosaurus was even faster than it. A violent dragon energy hit its belly again. The Devourer was violently knocked away, and its body began to shrink rapidly in the air. The whole thing shrank like a deflated balloon, until it was even several times smaller than when it first appeared, and it was less than 1 meter at a glance. Lacey was also stunned by this sudden change. It was certain that the opponent was strong, and he knew it from the beginning. However, when Qingliu saw through all his tactics and defeated him, it was hard for him to accept it. You don't have any other Pokemon, right? Qingliu's voice sounded in his ears, and Lacey raised his head with a lifeless look. There was no reply, but the meaning was very clear. Devourer was his last trump card Pokemon. Since you lost, then now, as a weakling who is destined to be eliminated in your mouth, can you apologize to my Tyrannosaurus and then go and shine yourself? Standing in the palm of Tyrannosaurus, Qingliu said condescendingly. Hearing Qingliu's words, Lacey's eyes gradually focused on Qingliu. After staring at him for more than 10 seconds, his eyes turned to Tyrannosaurus. For him, who was extremely cold and ruthless in treating Pokemon, apologizing to Pokemon was undoubtedly a naked humiliation. But he said it himself, and the opponent's strength was completely superior to his. If he broke his promise, it would be a complete slap in his face. After a long silence, Lacey's body trembled slightly and slowly bent down. I'm very sorry for what happened before. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Blackmail? There was no reply, and no response. Time passed in silence. Lacey kept apologizing, and his body and legs began to tremble slowly after being motionless for a long time. Tyrannosaurus turned his head slightly and looked at Qingliu, wanting to ask for his opinion. You want to be brave and righteous, I just help you to achieve this opportunity. How to deal with him is something you need to consider. Hearing this, Tyrannosaurus turned his head again and looked at Lacey, activating his brain that had not been used for a long time. The reason was that his attitude towards the big-tailed raccoon was very bad, which made people feel disgusted from the bottom of their hearts. With a sense of justice, it naturally roared when it saw injustice. But now if it really asked it to deal with such a thing, it really didn't know what to do. Let him go after apologizing? No, that would be a waste of its own and Qingliu's time and energy. It heard Qingliu occasionally mention, time is life, wasting time is tantamount to stealing money and killing. Then kill him directly? It doesn't seem to be a fatal sin. After all, the other party wants to use it, not Qingliu who was hiding behind the stone at the time. Even if it involves itself, as long as Qingliu is not affected, Tyrannosaurus feels that everything still has room for maneuver, which is what it has always thought. So what should be done now? If it is Qingliu, how would he deal with this matter? Tyrannosaurus fell into real thinking for the first time. Qingliu, who was standing by, was a little surprised to see this scene, but now he had to interrupt. If Tyrannosaurus continued to think, things would not go on. Ahem. Qingliu coughed twice. Tyrannosaurus, who heard the movement, locked his eyes on Qingliu's face. After getting along with each other for this period of time, it probably understood the meaning of Qingliu's micro-expression. Tyrannosaurus stretched out his claws and pinched Lacey, and fixed him firmly in the middle of his palm. The next second, the flames in his mouth began to condense, and a huge fireball appeared. Sizzle, the sound of the blazing flames sounded, and Lacey, who was just going to apologize, froze. He originally thought that an apology would be the end of the matter, but now it seems that the other Pokemon wants to silence him directly. He couldn't help but tense up his body, breathing rapidly as he looked at the Tyrannosaurus in front of him. When he saw the murderous intent in the other's eyes, Lacey couldn't bear it anymore. As the move that almost killed Mako with one blow before, Lacey knew clearly that if it was used on him at close range, there was no possibility of escape even if he wanted to run, not to mention that he was caught in his hand. And his Pokemon had just lost their combat effectiveness and had no ability to resist. He quickly thought about various possibilities of escape in his mind, and found that none of them were possible. In despair, Lacey trembled all over and closed his eyes, unwillingly forced to face death. However, what he had determined in his heart did not mean that his body could accept it. Lacey felt that his whole body was sweating uncontrollably, and soon his clothes were soaked, and then quickly evaporated by the scorching flames next to him. In this endless cycle of torture, the imagined attack did not fall. Lacey opened his eyes and saw Qingliu's teasing eyes. He suppressed his body shaking and asked, "Are you humiliating me?" "Humiliating? You may not be worthy of it." Qingliu shook his head calmly. I just wonder if killing you can make up for the time I lost. Lacey was silent and did not dare to answer casually. Although Qingliu did not do it, the feeling that he could be easily killed still lingered in his body. If you answer wrong, you will die. After thinking for half a minute, Lacey raised his head and said quickly, "What do you want?" Communicating with smart people is worry-free. Besides, you can rest assured that I don't want much. Qingliu was very satisfied with Lacey's reply. He smiled and nodded and said, "Energy blocks made of various qualities and tree fruits, good quality moo milk, various Poké Balls with different functions, various books about ancient civilizations in the Pokemon world, and various skill learning machines for Pokemon to learn moves." Lacey's eyes twitched involuntarily. Poké Balls, moo milk, books, etc. are not too expensive even if they are of better quality. The price of energy blocks made from various tree fruits is barely acceptable except for a small part. But the move learning machine, this thing can no longer be described as ordinary expensive. After all, various is a prerequisite with no range limit. Who knows how much he wants? Your current request is no different from blackmail. I didn't, you took the initiative to bring it up to compensate for my lost time, and you are not losing, right? Qingliu said lightly. Lacey was silent, took a few deep breaths to suppress his still trembling body, and nodded in agreement. I need time to prepare, okay, I'll give you 1 day, and I want to see something here after 1 day. Hearing this, Lacey couldn't help but ask, aren't you afraid that I will run away if you don't come with me? Don't worry, since I dare to do this, you can't run away. Lacey didn't reply, and prepared to leave after Tyrannosaurus released him. Wait? Are you going to regret it? Lacey turned around and asked. Qingliu still had that faint smile on his face, and said, leave all your Pokemon behind and go back by yourself. You should know that it won't work if you want to threaten me with these guys or use them as collateral. Qingliu did not continue the topic, but said, 1 minute has passed. You still have 23 hours, 58 minutes, 59 seconds, 58 seconds, 57 seconds left. Please don't waste your precious preparation time. Lacey then put down the 4 Poké Balls and left silently. Looking at his gradually receding back, the smile on Qingliu's face gradually became brighter. Tyrannosaurus, who was watching this scene, couldn't help but ask, Qingliu, is it really okay to let him go like this? What if he goes back to get reinforcements? If the reinforcements are too weak, they will just be sent away. If they can get strong reinforcements, he won't be like that. Besides, Lacey is a very smart person. He will know what kind of smart approach is. Lacey? Qingliu, do you know his name? How could I not know? Since hearing his voice and seeing his face before, Qingliu began to recall whether he was a familiar person like Xiaosong. Originally, he just wanted to help Tyrannosaurus at first. If the other party was unrepentant, Qingliu would not mind killing him directly. But just as he defeated the Onyx tribe and was chasing them, Qingliu suddenly remembered who this familiar person was. Vale City, big-tailed raccoon, brown hair, cold trainer. Several key pieces of information combined together point to the most successful rival created in the history of the entire Pokemon anime, Shinji. Of course, Shinji at this time might still be a little kid, so the one who appeared here might be his biological brother, Reiji. Chapter 70 Reasons and Plans. At first, Aoyagi only had a vague feeling because the Reiji in his impression and the Reiji who appeared now gave him the feeling of being two completely different people. But when he suddenly remembered that Reiji once said that Shinji, who was Aoyagi's rival, looked exactly like him when he was a child, the feeling turned into speculation. But even so, Aoyagi had not completely connected the two together. It was not until he saw the Devourer finally use the ultimate absorption that Aoyagi finally confirmed it. As for the reason, it was because Reiji's fighting style was too similar to Shinji, or to be more precise, Shinji was most likely imitating Reiji when he was a child. In memory, when the Sinnoh champion Sorona first appeared, Shinji challenged her in full view of the public. The disparity in level and strength between the two sides made Shinji choose a tactic from the beginning. That is to sacrifice several Pokemon to trick Sorona's Garchomp into using the powerful Ultimate Impact move, which is immobile for a short time after use, and then send out his initial Pokemon, the strongest Tortoise, to use the Ultimate Absorption to absorb physical strength and then counterattack, trying to defeat Garchomp. But the main force of the champion is nothing but meat, and the physical strength is sufficient, which is not something that ordinary people can solve. In the end, Shinji suffered a miserable defeat. He used the same routine as Lacey and experienced the same failure. One lost to himself, and the other lost to Sharona. It was also from this time that Qingliu came up with a righteous act of fishing law enforcement, reforming the youth while getting some benefits for himself. After all, he is not the middle school boy who used to think about killing, chopping, and slashing when he saw injustice. A qualified adult should think about how to seek greater benefits in the face of the same thing. After all, even if he can control his size, Tyrannosaurus is still a super glutton. If he doesn't make more preparations, he will not be able to bear the food expenses sooner or later. What's more, it can help the Pokemon world cultivate a trainer with a normal outlook on life, so why not do it? If Qingliu remembered correctly, Lacey and Shinji's families were breeding houses. In such an environment, not to mention things like Poké Balls, there must be abundant reserves of energy blocks, and, the most important thing, the move learning machine, must also be available. Starting from the challenge of the Lost Tower, as the levels got higher and higher, Qingliu discovered a problem. At that time, although Agumon's physical fitness and physical strength crushed Pokemon of similar levels, and its combat power was absolutely advantageous when it was full, the attack range of its moves was really narrow. Even if it learned a move like Small Blast at that time, it only changed the power of the move. This situation became more obvious when fighting with Sharona. Facing Sharona's Flower Rock monster's Night Demon Shadow and Shadow Sneak attack combination skills, as well as the number of moves such as Trick, Resentment, and Psychic Power, Tyrannosaurus can only rely on a single firepower coverage attack. If I hadn't had the confidence to evolve Agumon into Greymon, it would have been hard to say who would win or lose. And this time I had evolution as a trump card, so what about next time? Will I be able to evolve by chance next time? The answer is no. If I encounter an opponent in Pokemon with the same combat power, and the opponent suppresses Greymon from the attribute with multiple moves and sufficient attack surface, Greymon will have no way to fight back. And because of the similar combat power and the restrained attributes, if Greymon's 3 fire axes are useless, the final failure is inevitable. This is the advantage brought by the attributes of the Pokemon world, but also a disadvantage. If you want to solve this problem, you must learn moves to expand the attack surface. Besides, it's a bit inexplicably exciting to think about using Battle Tornado while stacking Sword Dance and Dragon Dance in the future. The extreme bonus of Sword Dance and Dragon Dance, the power of Battle Tornado and Dragon Beast, the lethality will definitely reach a terrifying level. There are many similar moves. So from then on, Qingliu wanted to buy some skill discs for Pokemon to learn moves. However, when he was in Random Town, he didn't have time to carefully select. He was in a hurry at that time. Now he ran to the rock mountain outside the Vale City. He didn't have any time to buy and try. Moreover, the 140,000 Alliance coins he had left on him couldn't buy a few practical or powerful skill discs. Just when Qingliu didn't know what to do, the savior Lacey appeared. Next, we just need to wait for him to deliver the things. Qingliu stretched and leaned against a boulder that could block the wind and sand. But Qingliu, although I don't know what the conditions you offered are, from his attitude towards Pokemon, I feel that he is very unreliable. Tyrannosaurus said while picking up 4 Poké Balls on the ground. Don't worry, although his attitude towards Pokemon is not good now, he is not that bad in terms of human nature. The fact that he can change from his current indifferent appearance to the future head of the breeding house who is enthusiastic and respectful of people is the best proof of Lacey's nature. And this is not a special case. This happened again to his younger brother Shinji. Originally, Shinji was extremely indifferent to Pokemon and did not care about the status of Pokemon at all. He adhered to the military iron-blooded training. After meeting Xiaozi, he slowly began to be influenced and changed. In the final battle of the Lily of the Valley Conference, facing the defeated Electables, Shinji said comforting words to Pokemon for the first time, and also recognized that the strength of Charmander under Xiaozi had improved dramatically. When Xiaozi was about to have a peak battle with the 8 Masters, Shinji specially used the main Pokemon of the 3 opponents he cultivated to help Xiaozi with targeted training. When they parted, the once indifferent Shinji came all the way to the Oak Research Institute to study, and told Xiaozi that his future goal was to become a gym trainer who taught and educated people. Such people may have problems in many aspects, but it must be admitted that their nature can still be saved. Just like the words engraved on the random ruins, all life will meet other life and produce something. Shinji met Xiaozi, Xiaozi met Shinji, and a bond was born. Even the two brothers, Ryuji and Shinji, who have not yet been trained, have deep respect for the strong. The two brothers were beaten by Qingliu and corrected by Qingliu. As long as they really lost the battle, Ryuji would definitely try his best to meet his requirements, not to mention that he was holding his life as a bargaining chip. The next day, early in the morning, Qingliu took Tyrannosaurus and the other 4 Pokemon to get up early for training. After running around 5 rocks for several laps to warm up, Tyrannosaurus suddenly stood up and his eyes became sharp. The 4 Pokemon next to him seemed to have sensed something more or less, and their expressions became focused and looked not far away. Aoyagi, the guy from yesterday, is here. Aoyagi nodded, but before he could say anything, Tyrannosaurus spoke again. Not only him, there are also humans and Pokemon around him. Hearing this, Aoyagi frowned, and then asked Tyrannosaurus to collect the 4 Pokemon. When he was about to use the divine plan to control the size of Tyrannosaurus to prepare for emergencies, a monster carrying a huge sack appeared. Then, Lacey, and a middle-aged man who looked very wealthy and had an 80% similar appearance, walked through the wind and sand and saw Aoyagi. Before Aoyagi could react, the middle-aged man walked quickly and crawled down to him. "I'm very sorry, my son has caused you trouble." Chapter 71, Mature but not fully mature. In such a scene, even with Lacey's personality, he seemed to feel embarrassed about what was happening in front of him, and turned his head to look to the other side. Qingliu looked at the middle-aged man lying in front of him, then turned his head to look at Lacey, trying to get some information from him. Such a look was quickly caught by the middle-aged man, who stood up from the ground, grabbed Lacey's neck and pressed him to the ground. "Why are you standing there like an idiot? If you did something wrong, hurry up and apologize to others." After saying that, the middle-aged man directly pressed Lacey into a posture of sitting down. "I have heard about the incident from Lacey, and I am deeply sorry for the trouble I have caused you." The middle-aged man apologized again in a very sincere tone. Although it is a traditional art, Qingliu still recognizes this attitude. Of course, one thing is one thing, and the time loss fee that should be collected must still be collected. Qingliu looked at him quietly, then looked at Lacey beside him, and said, "He has already apologized to the person he should apologize to. Just give me the things I need to prepare." "Of course." The middle-aged man stood up and waved behind him, saying, "Kuwa-ili, carry it here." With 4 thick arms and a body as strong as a bodybuilding champion, Kylie came over with a huge sack that was level with his head and put it on the ground. "According to your requirements, we have prepared energy cubes made from all the more common and popular tree fruits, as well as 3 mainstream moo milk processed by large milk tanks, a number of Poké Balls of various styles, and 3 best-selling books." The middle-aged man opened the sack, took out the items one by one and handed them to Qingliu for inspection. "In addition, I have put all the move learning machines you requested in it." Following the guidance of the middle-aged man, Qingliu saw a large number of move learning machines at the bottom of the sack. So many. Qingliu was a little surprised. "I originally thought that having 40 or 50 would be great, but now it seems that this has far exceeded my psychological expectations. To show our sincere apology to you, we have brought all the storage at home and all the things we can collect at present. If you think it is not enough, please give me some more time to prepare, at least I can get some." Qingliu looked at the densely packed move learning machines and asked, "How many are there now?" "A total of 86. "Then there is no need, the remaining ones are not a big deal." Qingliu waved his hand and said, "In all the generations now, there are a total of 919 moves in the Pokemon world. Excluding some special exclusive moves, there are even fewer common moves that can be learned by move learning machines, only 171. What is in front of us now is close to half of the total number of all move learning machines. It can be said that all the more common moves in the Pokemon world are probably already here. With such a large number of blessings, I am afraid that the value of this sack will instantly soar at an unimaginable speed." In addition to the move learning machine, Qingliu also found something, a Pokemon egg placed on the egg sack in a glass cover. The egg body is a clear and beautiful blue, and in the middle of the egg, there are clusters of white clusters, giving people the feeling of looking up at a clear blue sky dotted with white clouds in summer. "What does this mean?" Qingliu looked at the middle-aged man and asked. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man first glanced at Lacey, then sighed and said, "Because I am usually busy running the business of my family's breeding house, I neglected to discipline my 2 sons, and their mother died prematurely due to illness. This time it has caused you a lot of trouble before. I will definitely discipline him strictly and correct his attitude. In addition, this egg, which is very good from the perspective of a breeder, is given to you as an additional compensation. At the end, the middle-aged man bowed again. Please accept it. Seeing that the other party did not want to get up if he did not accept it, Qingliu was silent for a few seconds. Since the other party came to this place, Qingliu noticed that the other party would look at Tyrannosaurus from time to time, but he was very restrained and did not look at him rudely. He focused more on himself. Even he had to admit that their father, who was completely different from Reiji Shinji, was not only good at doing business, but also good at being a man. From the long-term perspective of a businessman, he also understood operations such as investment and showing goodwill. The most important thing is that he has enough courage. A move-learning machine that accounts for half of the Pokemon world, a Pokemon egg that looks good at first glance, even if it is sold at a discount, is a huge sum of money. And now, all of them are given to him as an apology. So, what do you want with so many things? Qingliu asked slowly. This is just a must for an apology. How can there be any requirements? The middle-aged man replied immediately. After Qingliu didn't respond, he whispered, I just have a very small request. I hope you can agree to it. Go ahead. I heard from Lacey that when he saw your Pokemon before, it was very large. It must have left the juvenile stage and entered a period of maturity in all aspects, right? Seeing that the other party did have some ideas about Tyrannosaurus, but this idea seemed to be significantly different from what he thought, Qingliu couldn't help but frown. What do you want to do? Seeing this, the middle-aged man immediately apologized and said, Don't worry, I don't have any intention of getting involved in your Pokemon, and this is not in line with my original intention of building a breeding house. I just want to ask, if, when it reaches the age of normal needs in the future, can you give priority to my breeding house? Don't worry, I will carefully prepare a suitable and excellent partner for it to ensure that it will have no regrets in its future life. Aoyagi. When Tyrannosaurus heard that it was being discussed, it immediately looked at Aoyagi with a puzzled expression, but it was obvious that it did not understand what it meant. It seems that even if it has entered the mature stage, it does not mean that the whole body, including the brain, has matured. Mature, but not fully mature, maybe there will be changes when it reaches the perfect stage? It's too early for it now. If there is a real need in the future, I will consider it, but before that you have to keep its identity confidential. After getting Aoyagi's promise, the middle-aged man nodded frequently with great joy, and then took out a business card from his pocket and handed it over. Curtain Breeding House, person in charge UC, contact number XXXXXXX. By the way, I was so busy talking that I didn't ask for your name. Aoyagi. Then Mr. Aoyagi, we won't bother you anymore. I'll leave these things here for you. You can contact me at any time if you need them. After seeing Lacey pulling Lacey, who had been standing by without saying anything but just watching quietly, away, Tyrannosaurus came over and asked in confusion, Qingliu, what did that human just say about needs, partners, and that life? Quotation mark. Chapter 72 About Eggs About You. Qingliu turned his head and looked at Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurus looked up at Qingliu in confusion. As the two looked at each other, the atmosphere gradually became awkward. Do you really want to know? Feeling the solemnity in Qingliu's words, Tyrannosaurus' expression also became serious. Is this serious? From a human perspective, it is still quite serious and requires careful decision-making. Hearing this, Tyrannosaurus hurriedly asked, what about from the perspective of Pokemon or Digimon? I haven't studied it carefully, but from my understanding, it should be very simple and casual, and it will start when the time comes. In that case, then tell me. Seeing that Tyrannosaurus looked like he had already prepared himself, Qingliu couldn't help but feel a sense of evil in his heart, and said, Put your ears close to me, I will tell you carefully. The young and naive Tyrannosaurus immediately came close. A minute later. Ah! Qingliu! How can you agree to such a thing for me? I was only born a few months ago, I am not yet an adult. Tyrannosaurus shouted loudly in a loud voice. You have already evolved to the mature stage, it's almost done, do you want to evolve to the perfect stage? Tyrannosaurus immediately retorted, of course, the mature stage is only the maturity of the body, and the perfect stage is called the perfect stage because the body and mind are fully developed. I am not yet in the perfect stage, so it is impossible for me to do such a thing. That also depends on the actual situation. If you evolve to the perfect stage, you will be more than 10 meters tall, not to mention your weight. How many people in the Pokemon world can match you if they are bigger than you? In fact, it's not bad to try it now since you are not that big yet, otherwise there will be no one to match you in the future. Qingliu said seriously. Qingliu. Tyrannosaurus protested loudly, causing Qingliu to laugh. Okay, I'm just kidding you. We'll talk about reproducing offspring later. If you let your bloodline bloom everywhere now, others will find that your bloodline is different, and maybe we will be caught and sliced for research. Even if Tyrannosaurus has a certain combat power now, it is not enough at a better level. Before Sharona adds an identity to Tyrannosaurus, it still needs to be paid attention to. As for whether the information about UC and Lacey would be leaked, Qingliu was not very worried. After all, if more people knew about it, he would not be able to pass on the family line and breed new Pokemon in the future. He should know what was important. After watching Tyrannosaurus's slightly red face gradually return to normal, Qingliu looked at the huge sack next to him. The Poké Balls, energy cubes and other things had been checked before, and now he was more concerned about the Pokemon egg. During the period after the crossing, Qingliu and Tyrannosaurus also encountered a lot of Pokemon, including Pokemon in random ruins, lost towers, and the wild. However, the unknown totem was generally of no value to him now. The Pokemon in the lost tower, such as Ghastly and Incubus, had all been captured. As for the wild, the qualifications were uneven. The only one that was worth breeding was an armored bird. But at that time, he and Tyrannosaurus were in a state where one person could feed the whole family, and there was no such energy and food to breed a wild Pokemon. When I had enough money, it seemed like I didn't have much time. But now, everything seemed to have changed. Qingliu took out the incubator containing the Pokemon egg from the bag and gently placed it on the ground. Just like what I saw before, the blue shell was matched with a cloud-like pattern, and the whole egg looked very comfortable. Qingliu, is this the same thing as the Digimon egg? Tyrannosaurus, who had regained his composure, came over and asked while looking at the egg. Yes, but unlike Digimon, which will turn back into eggs when they die, the death of Pokemon is real death, and the rebirth is also real rebirth, a brand new life. Qingliu explained slowly. Tyrannosaurus looked at the egg quietly, with a little more curiosity and a hint of expectation in his eyes. Qingliu suddenly thought of a question and asked, by the way, Tyrannosaurus, if I capture it after it hatches, would you mind? Tyrannosaurus was stunned when he heard this. Why would you mind? Whether it's a human or any other creature with a high IQ, if a third party suddenly appears between the partners they spend every day with, the original two-person team will feel jealous because it's impossible to treat them equally, and eventually it will turn into a irreconcilable conflict. After hearing Qingliu's words, Tyrannosaurus fell into a long period of deep thought. After a long time, when Qingliu felt that Tyrannosaurus might really do this, Tyrannosaurus suddenly said, Qingliu, I understand what you mean. Understand? Understand what? There is a third party between the two-person team. This is the cheating you mentioned before. Tyrannosaurus said with certainty. Qingliu hit Tyrannosaurus on the head with a headshot, but it was covered with a shell and did not cause any damage. When did you learn to joke? Tyrannosaurus scratched his head a little embarrassedly, and then said, Aowagi, will you focus on a new companion and ignore me just because a new companion suddenly appeared? No. Then, will the relationship between us change? No. Will the new companion protect you when I am not around and face some unknown dangers? Yes. In that case, I am very happy about the arrival of the new companion, because, from that moment on, there will be more power to protect you. Tyrannosaurus said seriously, and Aowagi listened quietly. Looking at the intimacy that has reached 80 on the panel, Aowagi's mood became heavy. Perhaps it is not just Ozzy and Shinji who met each other, but he also met Tyrannosaurus, just as Tyrannosaurus also met himself. The intangible thing of bond made Aowagi feel the weight. He could also indirectly feel the pain in Teichi's heart when he faced the disappearance of Agumon and the completely petrified sacred plan after he became an adult. Tyrannosaurus did not know Aowagi's thoughts, but after expressing his feelings, he set his eyes on the Pokemon egg in front of him. Qingliu, do you know what kind of Pokemon is inside this egg? Tyrannosaurus asked curiously. Hearing Tyrannosaurus' question, Qingliu calmed down and turned his attention back to the egg. Although the pattern on the egg can often be used to identify the type of Pokemon inside, there are many eggs with the same pattern, and it is not easy to accurately know the type of information. However, this kind of exploration work is a small problem for the panel. Qingliu immediately called up the panel and aimed at the Pokemon egg in front of him. P.S. The first one is a Digimon, the second one is a Pokemon, and the third one I think is a different type from the first two. I don't know how you feel about other creatures and how you accept them. Chapter 73 Dragon Trader. Pokemon eggs detected, identification and progress, confirmed, information as follows. As rows of blue small characters quickly jumped in front of his eyes, a panel of information about the egg in the form of an illustrated book appeared in front of Qingliu. Race, blue cotton bird. Classification, cotton bird Pokemon. Attributes, general, flying. Features, not related to weather, any weather effect on it will disappear. Level, 0. Exclusive moves, none. Mastered moves, none. Race value, 310, health 45, attack 40, defense 60, special attack 40, special defense 75, speed 50, intimacy, 0, status, unborn, hatching time 3 days later. Information summary, the whole body is sky blue, and the feathers are like white clouds. It is not easy to be discovered when flying in the air. Therefore, it is extremely clean. When it sees something dirty, it will wipe it as hard as it can until it is satisfied. I don't know why, but it likes to lie on the top of humans' heads and disguise itself as a hat. Horizontal ellipsis. I thought it was Lulili, but it turned out to be a blue cotton bird. Looking at the feedback on the illustrated book, Qingliu was a little surprised. Looking at the blue and white stripes on the eggshell, the first thing that comes to mind is the initial form of the dragon slayer Marillary, who is full of muscles, has the characteristics of a strong man, and beats up a group of dragon-type Pokemon, Lulili. But what comes is not a dragon slayer, but a dragon-type trader. This is somewhat dramatic. Compared with the dragon slayer Marillary, the evolution of the bluebird, Tenabita bluebird, once mega-evolved, theoretically it will become a Pokemon with dragon and fairy attributes, and has up to 4 times the restraint on the same type of dragon-type Pokemon, a complete dragon-type killer. Wait. Thinking of this, Qingliu suddenly noticed a problem. According to the current process, Tyrannosaurus will eventually become Battle Greymon, and Battle Greymon has Dragon Beast Nemesis, which is already a very famous dragon-killing machine. Now add a Mega Tenabita bluebird. At this moment, Qingliu mourned for a few seconds for all the dragon trainers, dragon gym leaders, dragon 4 kings, and a certain dragon champion. It's better not to meet me in the future, otherwise I will be beaten to doubt my life. But this is all for the future. After confirming the identity of the egg and the specific hatching time, Qingliu explained to Tyrannosaurus, and at the same time, his favorability towards Lacey's father increased a lot. Such an egg is not cheap, but it is still given to me along with a pile of things in the sack. If you really want to breed and lay eggs in the future, you can give it priority. Qingliu, what are you talking about? Nothing. Let's take a look at these moves first and prepare to start a new training. Qingliu looked through all the Pokemon move learning machines and began to select the appropriate ones. Tyrannosaurus' current attributes are Dragon and Fire, and Qingliu prioritized the Dragon moves. Dragon Claw, Dragon Tail, Dragon Dance, Double Chop. Dragon Claws are inevitable. Claws are one of the core combat weapons of Tyrannosaurus, Machine Tyrannosaurus and War Tyrannosaurus, and related moves are indispensable. Dragon Tail can be used now and in the stage of Machine Tyrannosaurus. Needless to say, Dragon Dance, a very deterrent and practical dragon-type move that stacks buffs, is necessary to learn as long as it is still a dragon. Some dragon-type Pokemon do not know this move, and were even removed from the dragon category and became pseudo-dragons. However, compared with the previous 3, Qingliu is most concerned about the double split, which is a move that uses the hard part of the body to hit others and cause 2 stages of damage. As someone who has seen Nidoqueen perform a double kick with her tail when Sakuki fought Red, Qingliu has a more divergent mindset. Tyrannosaurus claws, the top of the head, the horns, the tail, and even the parts of the body that can be used as weapons can all be used to launch attacks. In terms of fire-type moves, because it already has 2 powerful attack methods, Super Flame and Super Blast, in the end, only Flame Fang and Flame Punch were picked out. As for more attributes and more possible combinations of moves, Qingliu is not in a hurry. Regarding the training of moves, what needs to be done in the first stage now is to summarize the experience according to the degree of training and mastery of Tyrannosaurus. In the suburbs of Vale City, at the foot of a rocky mountain, Tyrannosaurus looked ahead with a focused expression, and the aura of a ferocious beast on his body was restrained, as if he was a real stone sculpture and motionless. Maintain your current state of mind, and at the same time recall the feeling of mobilizing flames when using super flames and super blasts, and then transfer this energy to your claws, just like using sharp claws. This is the second day of training. In addition to being familiar with the basic principles of moves, it is to let Tyrannosaurus find the feeling by himself. In terms of using moves, Tyrannosaurus still has a lot of experience. After all, as long as he is full, he can carry out firepower coverage attacks, and the number is only more. Perhaps it is for this reason, or because it is similar to the use of sharp claws, Tyrannosaurus is making rapid progress in learning fire-related moves. At some point, a breeze blew, bringing gravel and fine sand on the ground to wander around. The next second, Tyrannosaurus followed suit. It took a big step forward, raised its arms, and red fire energy lingered on its claws, causing bursts of orange flames to dance in the air. After the flaming fist, the same fire energy appeared behind the teeth in Tyrannosaurus's bloody mouth, and it bit the air hard. Bang! The huge bite force combined with the touch of the fire energy exploded, making a dull sound. Good job. Next is the Dragon Claw. As Qingliu's voice fell, Tyrannosaurus dissipated the red fire energy and switched to dark blue dragon energy, slapping it hard on his body. But before he could slap it, the dragon energy on his claws suddenly collapsed and leaked out from the gaps between his fingers. Continue, use the dragon tail. Tyrannosaurus once again began to gather energy and lifted up to learn, but just like before, it was only half successful and ended before he could launch an attack. The same situation was also seen with the following Dragon Tail and Dragon Dance. The only thing that Qingliu did not expect was that Tyrannosaurus actually mastered the last two consecutive attacks very well, and even surpassed them and was almost on par with the progress of the fire-type moves. Sure enough, compared to other moves, the difficulty of the Dragon type is much higher, but in addition to the inherent Tyrannosaurus charge, there is finally another Dragon-type move that can be used. Although the power of the two consecutive attacks is only 40, the power can reach 60 with the characteristics of Tyrannosaurus, and the two consecutive attacks are also very suitable for Tyrannosaurus. Although Tyrannosaurus is a big guy, it does not mean that it is not flexible. Chapter 74 Training, Improvement, and Search. Day 3. Qingliu watched Tyrannosaurus training while taking notes on his moves. Day 4. After waking up and practicing, and with the help of some energy blocks with matching attributes, Tyrannosaurus has almost mastered Flame Fang and Flame Fist. The fluency of Double Chop has also been greatly improved, but the other three Dragon-type moves are still stagnant. Day 4, Evening. Double Chop, Flame Fist, Flame Fang, Sharp Claw, use them in a cycle. Under Qingliu's command, Tyrannosaurus began to conduct intensive training. Dragon-type energy and Fire-type energy kept alternating, and bursts of breaking air sounded in his ears. In the case of slow progress in the other three moves, Qingliu simply let Tyrannosaurus focus on the three moves that have reached a certain level of proficiency. At the same time, he also planned to relax the training of related moves to see if Tyrannosaurus can find some ideas later. However, from the current point of view, it seems that the effect is not very good. Logically speaking, Tyrannosaurus is now of pure dinosaur bloodline, and with a bug setting that was sneaked in, it is impossible for it to be unable to learn certain dragon-type moves like those pseudo-dragons. So what caused this situation now? Or is it that training alone is limited to improving itself, and it needs some external force to try to break through? Qingliu didn't know, but he thought he could give it a try. Thinking of this, Qingliu looked at Tyrannosaurus quietly for a while, and then looked further away. Then he turned around and said to Tyrannosaurus, "Okay, let's stop here for the training, and change places." Huh? Tyrannosaurus stopped, a little confused, but quickly came to sit next to Qingliu. Qingliu raised his hand and threw out 3 energy cubes. After feeding them to Tyrannosaurus, he said, "Next, let's go to the mountain opposite to see if there are any suitable Pokémon to fight against. Can it work?" Qingliu shook his head and said, "I don't know if it can work, but I know that if we continue like this, time may be stuck for a long time. The small blasting moves can be deduced by knowing some basic usage methods, but there are too many and too complicated Pokémon moves. Even if there are skill CD demonstrations, it is still too difficult to evolve from a Digimon who knows nothing to a proficient Pokémon move. Let's go directly when you feel your physical strength has recovered. After packing up the luggage, Qingliu sat directly on the palm of Tyrannosaurus' left hand, and its other hand was carrying the sack containing all the things. This thing is really too heavy, Qingliu can't hold it at all. No wonder UC asked the strange force to be responsible for carrying it that day. A week later. The sun gradually moved westward, and the fiery red sunset fell on the ground. The yellow mountain and the ground of the rock mountain were also dyed red by this obvious color. The fusion of the two looks like a different kind of beauty. Boom. 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 Tyrannosaurus's huge body was fully exposed, stepping on the sand and stones, running in the Rocky Mountains. Aowagi, where's the next one? Tyrannosaurus's huge voice sounded in his ears. Aowagi opened the panel and looked around. As the Pokemon Encyclopedia information was displayed on the panel, he finally pointed to the left front and said, about 100 meters in that direction, there are two large rock snakes. As Aowagi's voice fell, Tyrannosaurus instantly adjusted its direction and rushed straight to the location pointed by Aowagi. The huge body ran without concealment, shaking the ground with a dull sound. Soon, Aowagi and Tyrannosaurus arrived at the location just mentioned. This is a cave, and there are still very obvious traces of Pokemon activities in it, but at this moment, there is no Pokemon figure. Aowagi. It has run far away. Aowagi looked at the encyclopedia information locked by the panel getting farther and farther away, until it was about to exceed the exploration range of the panel. Aowagi shook his head helplessly. Why do I feel like this has happened before? It seems so, but I feel like the Pokemon in Suai Town have a problem with their temperament. They nod faster than anyone else every time they agree to a battle, and I always leave fruit and energy cubes after the battle, but they just hide from us. The Pokemon in these Rocky Mountains shouldn't be so stingy, right? It's hard to say. After a short silence, the man and the dragon set off to the next location. Unsurprisingly, almost when Qingliu's panel detected their location, it began to show that their distance was gradually increasing. What's more, Qingliu and Tyrannosaurus only took a look from a distance, and then disappeared with their families, leaving empty caves. Why do they all run away when they see us? Tyrannosaurus said with some annoyance. I think it's probably because you've been too heavy-handed recently, so no one wants to fight you. Qingliu thought for a moment and said seriously. Didn't you tell me not to hold back and to fight with all my strength to hone my moves? Then you shouldn't use that much force. That's true, but I feel like I'm almost there. I can't control myself. As Tyrannosaurus said this, the deep blue dragon energy quickly wrapped around its tail, and it slapped the ground with it in dissatisfaction. Qingliu was slightly relieved when seeing this. In the past week, they have walked through most of the nearby Rocky Mountain areas. At the same time, they have also completed the challenges along the way. With the help of the panel, Qingliu directly selected Pokemon with a similar level to Tyrannosaurus, preferably one that is still at a disadvantage in terms of attributes. This can prolong the battle time between Tyrannosaurus and the opponent, integrate the moves that have been mastered, and by the way, practice the moves that are still in a half-baked state. Thanks to the huge number of battles and enough energy cubes in the sack, Tyrannosaurus finally learned Dragon Claw, Dragon Tail, and Dragon Dance on the 4th, 5th, and 7th days of this week. However, they are only limited to the stage of knowing how to use them, but they are very awkward. If you want to use them skillfully in battle, you still need a certain amount of time and training. I originally thought about playing a few more games next time, but now it seems that it is not going to work. Okay, let's go find that Guriki directly. Qingliu sighed slowly. Hearing this, Tyrannosaurus was stunned for a moment and asked, Are you sure? As the only Pokemon that has not been scared by Tyrannosaurus recently and can still fight back, Guriki is the strongest Pokemon in Rock Mountain. Its level has reached 25. And because of its physical talent, it has great strength. Even if it fights Tyrannosaurus, it is not much inferior. Under normal circumstances, Qingliu does not want to fight with it. After all, there are only two states of size, daily and combat. One is too small and has no strength in combat, and the other is too big. It always gets beaten because of its size. But now there is no opponent. If you want to improve, you have to go. Sure, now except for it, I guess other Pokemon will run away when they see us. Okay. The man and the dragon then quickly moved towards the highest mountain in Rock Mountain. However, after arriving, Qingliu did not expect that the powerful Haoli was being beaten by another Pokemon. It was a dog-shaped Pokemon that stood up like a human. Chapter 75 Lucario. The upper body is thin, the lower body is strong, and two appendages similar to oracles extend from behind the erect ears. The hair on the whole body is blue and black, and the torso is milky white. There are cone-shaped spikes on the chest and the back of both hands. Although it is in the form of a dog, it looks majestic. I can actually see this kind of Pokemon here. Qingliu looked at the Pokemon with a very familiar appearance below with some surprise. Qingliu, do you know it? Tyrannosaurus looked at the two little guys below and asked in confusion. Of course I know it, a very famous guy, and I think we have found a sparring partner who is better than Haoli. Qingliu immediately opened the panel, and the information was quickly displayed in front of him. Race, Lucario, classification, wave Pokemon, attributes, fighting, steel, features, psychic, possessing a tough spirit honed through unremitting training, it will not shrink from the opponent's attacks, and can resist given the intimidation feature, level 23, exclusive moves, none, mastered moves, wave missile, copy, rock crusher, metal claw, vacuum wave, power, race value, 525, health 70, attack 110, defense 70, special attack 115, special defense 70, speed 90, intimacy, 0, status, normal, information summary, Lucario has the ability to listen and detect waves. Within a radius of 1 kilometer, it can read the opponent's emotions, actions and language through the waves emitted by living things. Whenever the appendage behind the ear floats, it means that it has begun to actively use the powerful force of the wave that can easily penetrate boulders. Horizontal ellipsis. Lucario. I didn't see it when I was patrolling nearby before, which means it came recently, and it looks like a martial artist. Qingliu quietly looked at Lucario who was fighting with Haoli at the bottom of the rock mountain, and whispered to himself. Even with the power of the wave guide, Lucario theoretically could not have any advantage against Haoli, who was full of strange power. In addition, the slight lag in level made the disadvantage even greater. But even so, Lucario was uncharacteristically suppressing Haoli. It didn't rely on strength or wave guide, but skills. Qingliu could clearly see that every time it attacked, it tried to avoid direct conflict with Haoli's attack while moving, and instead used its flexible body and the perception ability of the wave guide to predict and dodge. Basically, Lucario was able to dodge 9.5 times out of Haoli's 10 attacks, and the remaining half was because Lucario chose to attack on his own initiative. This high level of reaction and fighting skills formed a sharp contrast with Haoli, a native barbarian. It was obvious that this Lucario had most likely received professional combat training, and most likely had a trainer. Qingliu quickly found the opponent. A female trainer wearing a training suit, with short pink hair and a very petite figure. She was directing Lucario to fight. The next second, she suddenly waved her hands, clasped her hands together on her right waist, and made a move that looked like Kamehameha. In the field, Lucario also made the same move at the same time. Wave missile. Qingliu said softly. A pure blue energy bullet quickly condensed between Lucario's claws and fired at Qingliu, who had already rushed to the front. Bang! With a muffled sound, the wave missile exploded after hitting, stirring up a cloud of smoke and dust, and directly blew Qingliu back one after another. Seeing Qingliu injured, the petite girl immediately threw a Poké Ball. The ball hit Qingliu's head accurately and pulled him in directly. After shaking several times, the girl picked up the Poké Ball happily. When she was about to celebrate with Lucario, she found that Lucario was looking up and staring at the distance with a serious expression. Lucario, what's wrong? Following Lucario's gaze, the girl narrowed her eyes and looked at the top of the rocky mountain opposite. Did you find it? Seeing that the girl and Lucario were looking at their location, Qingliu was a little surprised. The wave guide is really useful. Seeing Lucario approaching quickly, Qingliu pondered for a moment, and did not take back Tyrannosaurus. Instead, he used the divine plan to compress the data, controlled Tyrannosaurus to its normal state, and then waited quietly. Soon, Lucario took advantage of the momentum from the top of the adjacent rocky mountain and jumped to the relatively flat area where Qingliu was. Lucario let out a low roar, and his eyes swept back and forth between Qingliu and Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurus stepped forward and stood in front of Qingliu, staring at Lucario with his scarlet eyes. Lucario, wait a minute. Before the atmosphere could escalate, The panting voice of the pink-haired girl came over. The girl then climbed to the top of the mountain, took a deep breath to suppress her rapid breathing, looked at Qingliu and said, "I'm sorry, Lucario felt that there were people nearby, so he came here without permission. Did it scare you?" "It's okay." Qingliu smiled and replied. "My name is Li, and it's Lucario." The pink-haired girl took the initiative to introduce herself. Qingliu's eyes narrowed slightly. No wonder she has a rare Pokemon like Lucario and has obvious systematic training and fighting skills. It turns out that she is the future gym trainer of the Curtain Gym. Both are fighting girls, and both have Lucario as their main force. Qingliu used to look forward to a peak showdown between Li and Korn in Pokemon vs. Pokemon, and trainer vs. trainer. "My name is Qingliu, and it's Tyrannosaurus." After the two parties briefly introduced themselves, Li's eyes fell on Tyrannosaurus. Or rather, she had been paying attention to it since she came here. "I've never seen this Pokemon before. Did it come from other regions?" Li asked curiously. "Yes, it came from the very remote Faru Island." "Faru Island? I don't think I've ever heard of it." Li looked at Lucario awkwardly, and Lucario also shook his head to indicate that he didn't know. As if feeling that such a conversation was a bit awkward, Li changed the subject and asked, "Today, Lucario and I happened to pass by here and encountered that galley with good potential, so we captured it." "Qingliu, are you here because you want to capture that galley?" "Because this area is Galley's territory and there are no other Pokemon?" Qingliu appeared here and didn't look like she was lost, so Li habitually classified her as coming here to capture Galley. After thinking for a while, Qingliu said slowly, "We are not here to subdue Galley." Ollie heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this half-sentence. If they were all here to subdue Galley, then she would not only be the first to mention this matter but also take the initiative to bring it up, which would definitely make the atmosphere more awkward. However, the second half of Qingliu's words immediately made the stone in her heart float up again. "But we are indeed here for it." "Come for it, what do you mean?" "Because the training of Tyrannosaurus has reached a bottleneck, we want to try to find an opportunity for a breakthrough in this powerful Galley." Hearing this, Ollie immediately became energetic, and the stone in her heart fell again, and she hurriedly said, "What kind of training is it? I can let Galley come out to help." After saying that, Ollie took out Galley's Poké Ball and was about to open it. "No, I think I have found a better training target now." Qingliu looked at Lucario on the site and said slowly. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.